Please, I have an announcement. I have an announcement.
Here's Richard Dale.
Democrats today urge you to go big and stick together.
Margaret, can you mute everyone?
I'm not sure how to do it.
Oh, I can. Hold on.
Yeah, I got it. Here.
You got it? Okay.
That should do it. I think anybody coming in though, that's not the default. So just a heads up.
Well, we'll wait one more minute. Great to see everyone. Normally, we'd all be sitting in a big circle and people would be wandering in, but they're wandering in electronically. So we'll wait another minute or so and let everyone get settled a bit. Okay, well, wonderful to see everyone. We're just 99 folks, just about 100 people on the call. It's great to see you all, and it's great to be in Londonderry. Wish we were there in person. Love the community, love the valley and the mountains down there. And I'm Paul Costello. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Council on Rural Development. This is the 80th community visit process that we've done like this, where we've invited the full community to come together in a nonpartisan, non-stakeholder way to think about the big picture of the future, to evaluate opportunities and challenges, to think of all the different possible ways that the community could work together to drive towards a dynamic future. And then over the course of months, choose priorities for action, build task forces, drive work forward. It's the 80th time we've done it, but it's the first time we've done it on Zoom. So really appreciate everyone's patience, everyone's commitment to Londonderry and its future. The Council on Rural Development is charged by the Federal Farm Bill to be a neutral facilitator of public process. We don't think we know what's good for Londonderry. We don't have a game plan for the future of Londonderry. Our job is first to listen, and that's what we're here for tonight, to gather your ideas and thoughts on the 4 areas that were selected by the steering committee from Londonderry, and then listen hard, reflect a little with you, and gear up for the next stage of this process where we'll be making priorities out of all the ideas that hit the table tonight. The council is charged by the Farm Bill as a neutral facilitator. We do this work all around the state. We add up what we learn and report to the governor and legislature and other folks that are working in rural development to build unity and to support communities in every way we possibly can. It's an honor to be part of the process with you. We are built on the idea that local folks make the best decisions. Local communities are best at defining what's good for them, and support and grants and momentum follows those who gear up as collective spear points of activity by unifying around common goals. So in this time in Vermont, Londonderry is modeling a new stage of this kind of organizing, and we're really proud to be part of it with you. I want to just briefly introduce the folks that we've brought as a visiting team tonight, who are going to listen and reflect and ultimately be there to support the community as work goes forward. We have Richard Amore from the Agency of Commerce. We have Ted Brady, the Deputy Secretary of Commerce and Community Development. Jason Broughton, the State Librarian. Chris Campany, the Director of the Windham Regional Commission. Ben Doyle, President, Preservation Trust of Vermont. Rebecca Ellis, who leads the Office of Congressman Peter Welch in Vermont. Sarah Lang from the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation. Karen Middleman, the Executive Director of the Vermont Arts Council. John Michael Muse, the Area Director for Vermont for USDA Rural Development. Haley Perro, Outreach Specialist for Senator Bernie Sanders. Allie Richards, the CEO of Let's Grow Kids. Chris Saunders, Office of Senator Patrick Leahy. Jessica Savage, the Recreation Coordinator in Forest Parks and Recreation. John Sales, the CEO of Vermont Food Bank. Gus Seelig, the Director of the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. Gabrielle Sistari, Small Business Recovery Navigator from Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation. John Tracy, the State Director for the Office of Senator Leahy. Mia Watson from the Vermont Housing Finance Agency. Sue Westa from the Windham Regional Commission. Kevin Weiberg from the Vermont Community Foundation. And Amy Bell from the Vermont Agency of Transportation. I want to just also introduce my staff, Margaret Gibson McCoy, Alyssa Johnson, Jenna Kowalski, who many of you may have met already, and Nick Kramer, who will be working together to manage the process tonight and over the course of the next 3 months. I'm going to turn it to Jenna. Appreciate all your leadership, Jenna, in pulling the meeting together tonight.
Thanks, Paul, and hi, everyone. Great to see such an excellent virtual turnout, and really excited to think with you all about the future of the community. So I'm going to take a second really quickly to walk you through what this process is going to look like over the next few months. As a starting point, I do want to mention that this process was invited by the Londonderry Select Board. We only work with communities that invite the process, and then we work in the long term on behalf of the full community. And then the process really started about 3 weeks ago when a group of residents from all different parts of the community, business leadership, school leadership, leaders in the faith community, a student from the school, and we really looked at all the different pieces that make up the Londonderry community and brought representatives together. It really helped us to frame this process forward. So the topics for discussion that you'll see tonight, those were chosen by folks locally. Those were people from your community saying, these are really the issues that we want to look at as we think about the future of our town. And that committee also helped us to line up all the ways to reach out across the community and invite everyone to participate. Tonight is all about brainstorming. So tonight I'll describe a little more detail in a second, the technical details, but tonight we're gonna break up into forums where facilitators are gonna ask, what are the assets in this topic area? What are the challenges? But then the bulk of the time is really going to be spent on what are your ideas for the future of the community, and not at all what are the ideas that the select board should take on or the planning commission would do. It's really about thinking about what can we do to line up action for the future of our town. So we'll focus on that, and then we'll have some time for the visiting team to reflect on the conversation. After tonight, what we're going to end up with is a whole lot of notes of your ideas. So we're going to have dense notes that capture everything that's shared tonight. We also have shared an online survey that's already had quite a few responses, as well as some print surveys around town. We'll collect all of that together, and we will kind of consolidate it, do a cluster analysis of all the different ideas that come up tonight. You can imagine that in the session on economic opportunities and in a session on housing and transportation, you're going to see some overlap in the ideas, and we'll help to add those up, and we'll bring them back to you at our next meeting on February 25th. So on the evening of February 25th, we'll come back together. We'll send out, we've got contact info, we'll send out that information, and we'll share those ideas with you together, review them together as a community, and then walk through a process to vote to top priorities for the future. So we'll walk out of that with maybe 3 to 5 core priorities that your community would like to take on for the future. A month later, we'll come back together for the final meeting, where we'll actually break into task forces that focus on those topics that were chosen. So that meeting, which will be March 16th, at that meeting, it really will serve as a first meeting of the task forces, where we'll have a facilitator that will help walk through action planning. What are the things we need to do today to take this on? And then also thinking about what are the resources that are available that can help support our work. And we'll bring with us, you just met the visiting team that's here tonight to share kind of high level reflections and think with you as a community. But in March, we'll bring a team that's really ready to sit down with these task forces and say, here's what my organization can do to help, or here are the resources that are out there that could support your work, and hopefully be contacts and support to you in the long term. After that, we'll issue a kind of final action plan and also provide support and resource and referral in the long term to help you move those priorities forward. So that's the plan for the next few months. We're really excited to get started, and really glad to be able to do this, even though we can't be together in the same room. So really quickly, the plan for tonight, just to walk you through, tonight we are going to, in just a few minutes here, I'll describe how we're going to do it, but we're going to break into 2 different sets of breakout conversations, and it's up to you which ones you want to attend. So at right around 6:20 here, we'll break into 2 options, which are economic development, jobs, and village center, or youth, families, and childcare. So choose either of those that you want to attend. At 7:35, we'll come back, and then we'll have an opportunity to break out again. So a second choice between housing and transportation and recreation, health, and wellness. In each of those sessions, you'll have a facilitator, Paul Costello, who just spoke. I'll be facilitating, and then Nick Kramer. And we'll lead you through a series of questions that will capture what are the assets. We'll spend about 15 minutes on what are the challenges, and then we'll really dig in for a whole half hour to really think about what are those ideas? What are the things that we could do as a community to take advantage of those assets and opportunities and to address some of those challenges that we shared. And then we'll spend those last 15 minutes with a chance for the visiting team members to very briefly share their reflections and their thoughts with the community. So that's the plan for the evening. Paul, is there anything else that we should review?
Well, I guess I would just say that we've done this process with towns throughout the state, and we've seen towns do tremendous things. Towns redevelop their downtowns. Towns build affordable housing. Towns build agricultural networks, energy committees, beautification projects, projects for young people. And some things are free. Some things are big long-term projects that communities take on. We don't have an agenda. We don't know what's going to come from this process, but we see towns that take this on and build a new sense of civic participation, new volunteers. In Rutland, when we did this, we had 450 people attending meetings, and 220 of them joined committees to drive Rutland forward. And they're still working. And it's had a tremendous effect for the future of that city. So we're really excited about the process tonight, and really eager to go into the sessions and hear your thoughts and directions. And that's all I would add, Jenna.
Excellent. Thanks, Paul. So, and I just want to address a couple of questions that came up in the chat while we're here. Yes, Nick is doing it as well. We are going to record these sessions. I hope that most of you have been able to visit, and Nick, maybe you can put the website in the chat. We've created the One Londonderry Hub. It's a website that walks through when those next two events are that I described, the different ways to share input, like the survey and where the other print surveys are in town. And as we go through the process, we'll load up everything there. So all of the recordings from tonight and the notes that we capture, and then eventually those ideas that we'll be voting on. So that'll really be the hub for this process where you can go back to get updates and follow along with the process. So all of that said, I want to just describe how we're going to end up in the breakouts. And so for many of us, this may be the first time that we've done this. So what we're going to do in a moment is Margaret has set it up so that we have two breakouts, the Economic Development, Jobs and Village Center, and the Youth, Families, and Childcare. In a moment, she's going to hit open breakouts. You're going to see a little bubble pop up on the bottom of your screen if you're on the computer, and you'll be able to click that and then select which breakout room you want to go to. I do want to give you a heads up that if anyone has an outdated version of Zoom or is on the phone, you're not going to automatically get that message. That's okay. Don't panic. Just stay where you are. And Margaret here is going to stay in the room and help direct you to where you want to go. So if you don't get sent automatically, that's okay. We'll get started with just some just some intros in the beginning of the breakout, and you'll have a few minutes to get directed to where you want to be. So just hang tight, and then you'll let Margaret know which room that you'll want to go to. So that is if you don't get sent automatically, or if you're on the phone, you'll need to do that. And I also just want to let you know, if you are, I think we do have some people calling in on the phone. In order to speak up when you're on the phone, to unmute yourself, you'll use *6 on your phone, and that's how you'll be able to chime in. Otherwise, you can use if you're on a tablet or phone or computer, you can use the Zoom functions to raise your hand or unmute and chime in. So I think that covers the technical details. Margaret, are we ready to go?
Ready to go.
All right. So Margaret's going to open up those breakouts. Look for the join breakouts or breakout rooms on the bottom of your screen and click on that. And then you can select where you want to go, and we will look forward to seeing you there.
Sending you now.
Hi, folks. This seems to be working, but we better wait a minute. There are still 63 people who are unassigned to working groups. I can hear Margaret in the other room here, who's trying to sort out 55 people's rooms with them. It's going to take a while, and I think we should get started, and people will join as they can. So I'm Paul Costello again. I'm going to lead this session on economic development, jobs, and village center. Really honored to have a great visiting team of representatives from state, federal, nonprofit, and here to support the conversation. We're going to ask you to Keep the mute on until it's your turn to talk, and you can raise your hand by going to the participant box and clicking raise hands. Where's that? Actually, it's under reactions now at the bottom of your screen, and you can just hit that and touch the yellow hand and it will come up for us. We're going to stay on time with our platform, which is really thinking mainly at the beginning about the assets we have around economic development, jobs, and village center. And then what are the challenges around these? What's the challenge to Londonderry's future when we think about jobs, development, economic activity, and village center? And then take a full half hour to list your ideas for what could be done. We're not making decisions tonight, but we're laying in our best thoughts about what's the potential. And then finally, in the last 15 minutes, our visiting team will reflect back about some of the things that they heard that were most important and potentially fertile areas of direction from their point of view. So I'm going to start by asking the question of what are your assets when you think about economic development, jobs, and the village center? What are some of the things that Londonderry has going for it? And we'll just take quick responses from people. Who'd like to go first?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Supermarket.
Tom saying the supermarket.
Magic Mountain.
Magic Mountain.
Well, I think London is.
You know what? It would be really good if people actually go to the reactions and raise your hand. If you hit the yellow hand, Katrina, you're next.
Yes, Jamaica Cottage Shop.
Jamaica Cottage Shop is an asset. Great. What else should be on the list?
I think that, this is Dennis Pinker now, I think the fact that we are centrally located between 3 ski areas, a wonderful town market, and it's just a terrific place to be.
Terrific. Thank you, Dennis. Annabelle Gray, go ahead.
Lowell Lake.
What's the name of the lake?
Lowell.
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 Okay, terrific.
Well done.
Margot Wright.
Taylor Farm.
Taylor Farm. Terrific. Who else would like to share a reflection on something that's an economic asset? Richard Dale.
I would also say the Walker Theater up in Weston, the arts.
The arts and Walker Theater are an asset. Margot Wright.
I already said Taylor Farm.
Okay. Want to knock your hand down. Nicholas Everett.
Sorry.
Londonderry is a service center as opposed to Landgrove and Weston or South Londonderry. For instance, it has food, it has gas stations. So we need to think of it in terms of it being a service center as opposed to a tourist center.
Terrific. Larry and Cynthia Gubb.
I'd say local cheese manufacturers and some agricultural products.
Terrific.
Are some assets.
Patty Eisenhower.
Sorry. I just wanted to concur with the fact that it was a good service hub.
Okay, thank you so much.
I had a thumbs up.
All right, good. Paul Abraham.
Our history with Burton and Hayes Brothers snowboards.
Yeah, Burton started there, huh?
Yeah.
Jonathan Sporn.
Yeah, the summer farmers market.
Great. Joel Kuhlberg. You're muted, Joel.
All we're doing is hauling out
Corps
names.
of Engineers, Corps of Engineers campground.
The Engineers Campground. Terrific.
Winhall Brook.
Okay, thank you. Georgiana Mora.
The restaurant Solo Farm and Table, which attracts people not just from around the country, but also from around the world.
No kidding. Jane McCluger.
Overall recreation, not just the ski areas, but the lakes, the parks.
You're really a mecca for that, huh?
Yeah.
Shane O'Keefe.
It's a transportation network connectivity.
What do you mean by transportation network? The roads?
Well, we have 2 state highways coming through town that merge, and local roads that are good connector roads between them.
Terrific. Jacqueline Gold.
Raise your hand.
Jacqueline, did you want to speak?
Yeah, the restaurants, Jake's, the New American Grill. I would say we could probably use more that are really geared towards people who live here, not just for tourists.
Can I say something?
Yes, Margaret.
Yes. It's really a centralized small town. We have a bank, we have a post office, there's a small library in South Londonderry. I mean, not every town has those 3 things, and as large as Londonderry does have. So beside the service stations, the ski areas, the restaurants, a low lake, which is very special, the dump.
You got it.
Very self-contained because it has library, bank, and post office.
Okay, thank you. Very self-contained, tidy. It'd be best if people went to the reactions button and hit that to get their hand raised if they can. But I'm going to go to Dwight Johnson.
Hold on. Oh, you're there.
Yes, the Garden Restaurant and the Londonderry Butcher Shop.
Great. And Richard Dale?
Here it is. That we're big enough to have to and successfully grapple with things like elderly and disabled and low-income housing as a way of saying that we're a vital community that embraces people from all economic strata and their needs for housing and security.
Terrific, thank you. Katrina Fleck. Katrina?
Hi, yes, I had actually said Jamaica Cottage Shop as, you know, a company that's rapidly growing in the area. But listening to everyone, it's really apparent that there are a lot of, you know, small businesses that are growing and the need for them is rising. I mean, I can, you know, listening, you know, we've got even Taylor Farm, but then there's also, you know, my plow guy is in Londonderry and he's just amazing and handles a lot of things, and the arts and community yoga, and there's just quite a bit, and the list can go on and on.
Yeah, so we're building the list of economic development jobs and village.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. I'm seeing some people whose hands are still raised. If you've spoken and you don't want to have your hand raised, you might want to click it down. But I'm going to go to Carolyn Scully next.
The farmers market can go from May to September or October.
Okay, terrific. Margaret Mazer.
The Mountain Valley Medical Center. That's very important because it's like walk-in, there are doctors there all the time.
Terrific.
Emergency.
Great, thank you. Taylor Prouty. Taylor? Taylor, you are muted if you wanted to speak.
Sorry, Neighborhood Connections.
Neighborhood Connections, what's that?
Well, it's a lot of resources for people to, it's kind of a centralized place to go with, for our neighborhood, and anybody that needs coming from an outside area or even local people can find help that way. There's nursing and food bank, and I'm sure other people could add a lot more to what they do.
Cool. Martha Kells.
Yeah, don't forget about the medical center in Glebe Mountain Gardens.
Yep. Terrific. Larry and Cynthia?
The West River Trail, which we have here in town.
Where does the West River Trail go?
It goes down to the Winhall Brook Campground, which is the Army Corps of Engineer campground that was referred to earlier, but it's a great place to ride bikes, walk, cross-country ski.
It's an old railroad bed, the West River that ran between Londonderry and Brattleboro.
Oh, beautiful. What a great asset. Robert Bereza.
Ben Ezra. The Viking ski area and the thrift shop on Main Street.
That's your cross-country area, huh?
What's that?
That's your Nordic area, huh?
Yes.
Terrific. You got the whole 9 yards. Erwin Cooperberg.
Most of what I had in mind has already been said. I would just underscore our natural recreational opportunities at Lowell Lake, the ski center as mentioned, our town forest, and other public lands and woods that people can use and enjoy, the West River Trail. The other one that I want to emphasize as well is how we are the central source for supermarket, gas station to some extent, medical facility, and some of the others that I've mentioned already that feed from the other towns to us.
Terrific. Thank you. Joel Kuhlberg.
Floodbrook School and all of the features that it has that are for everybody.
Terrific.
Trails and athletic grounds and so on.
Terrific. Richard Dale.
Yeah, don't forget the Neighbor's Pantry, which is a bi-monthly food distribution center out of the Second Congregational Church, and also runs a backpack program for children and families from Floodbrook who are food insecure on the weekends.
Wow, terrific. It's amazing how much you have going on. Mary Lines.
Yes, there's a lot of arts and music that are accessible from Londonderry, the Weston Theater, Kinhaven, Sundays on the Hill in Weston, and others.
Great. Gary Kleeman.
Yeah. West River runs right through town, which maybe people have mentioned, but also Utley Brook and Thompsonburg. You know, there's a bunch of water connections in there.
This is going to show my ignorance, but is the West Brook, or are they navigable? Can you canoe there?
Yeah, that's the question. Seasonal, and definitely not Utley Brook, but West River is also pretty shallow. So, yeah. I mean, but at times of the year.
Okay, great. Roger Meltzer.
I wanted to add Brown Enterprises, which is a major supplier of all kinds of equipment for tractors, snowmobiles, equipment repairs, lawnmowers, chainsaws, anything that anybody needs for heavy duty stuff around their house. They sell it and they maintain it.
Terrific.
Between South Londonderry and
on your scale, it seems like you've got a lot of terrific assets all concentrated near the village. Richard Dale.
Sorry, all set. No question.
Yeah, so if you're done, you can lower your hand, okay? I see Tina LeBeau.
Yeah, I was just going to say Hunter Excavating has built quite a business in town as well.
Great, Hunter Excavating. Margot Wright. You're muted. Margot, you're muted. There you go.
Follow up Mimi Lines with Londonderry Arts and Historical Society, which has art and history shows throughout the summer. And there's been quite a lot of activity on Facebook with people showing photos, and it's quite fun.
Oh, that's terrific. So Facebook is strong, huh? We've got just a few more minutes, or just a couple more minutes for assets. There's so many going on here. Bruce, do you want to share one? Bruce Brauman?
Sure. Besides all these, and including Magic Mountain, which is a alpine ski area, which I'm sure has been mentioned, we have really strong support services. We have 2 fire departments and a really excellent rescue squad.
Excellent. Jane McClugler.
Yeah. I'm not sure if anyone had mentioned the thrifty attic that we have.
Yes.
Where do we?
Good. I'm going to go to Joel and Shane if you're still, and then we want to shift a corner here. Joel?
The Green Mountain Pharmacy, which is a great resource for all of us in town and around.
Terrific. Jeremy Dworkin's waiting.
Yeah, I think there's 2 things. There's 2 things that I have in mind. One is we have a sweet little library in South Londonderry, which has been around for, I don't know, maybe 100 years.
What about our access?
I think our greatest resources, as you can tell by the participation, are the people that live here.
Yeah, it's terrific. I know there's we could keep going. I'm going to let Matthew Mosher go last. We could keep going with assets for a long time, but you'll probably spin some of them in as we describe things that could be done. But I'm going to give Matthew a last shot. Go ahead, Matthew.
Just wanted to mention Hearthstone Village. I came on late, but you have Grandma Miller's Bakery. You have about 4 other businesses there, Wise Oak. You have the veterinary office. You have a psychologist. So you have a lot of resources in that little hub there as well. A lot of employment. Amazing. In such a small town to have all that. I want to shift gears. If you want to throw in an asset as we go, that's going to be fine. We're going to capture everything. Alyssa's taking dense notes and we're also recording. But as we go into thinking about where Londonderry can go, obviously this topic of economic development, jobs in the village center was selected by the steering committee because they wanted the community to dig deep into it in terms of what are some of the challenges and opportunities. And then we'll have a full half hour to lay out our big ideas on what could be done to advance this for the future of Londonderry. So let's take the next 15 minutes and describe, what are the challenges to economic development, to jobs and to the village center. And we're not debating, we're just putting our ideas on the line. So I see 3 people whose hands are still raised. Mary Lyons.
Some of the challenges of the ability for pedestrian pathways throughout our town for connectivity.
Okay, thank you. Joel Kuhlberg.
I was going to say Route 11 is both an asset and a liability. It's an asset because we have it, and it's a liability because everybody speeds through town and doesn't stop.
Is speeding a big problem?
Yes.
Okay, Georgianne? You're muted, Georgianne.
There's no public transportation, so we have limited vehicle access, have a hard time getting places that they need to go. And secondly, we do not have a laundromat nearby. The closest one is 25 miles away.
No kidding, holy smokes. That's great to know, thank you. How about Gail Mann? Are there other aspects to, you're muted, Gail.
There, am I unmuted? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so speaking of a laundromat, wastewater treatment's a huge problem for us, and also water overall for people who live in the village, both villages. So that is definitely an issue, prohibiting us from even selling properties, creating new ideas for properties in those areas.
Do you not have wastewater treatment at all?
Nope, none.
Wow, okay. Thanks for putting that on the table. Sharon Crossman?
I would mention in the water category, many of the businesses or structures in the main street village centers are within the floodplain.
And you've had some flooding. You got hit hard by Irene, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Eric
Mingarance, I'll save you right there.
Mingarance, I like that.
So just when we were talking about walking connectivity made me think of broadband connectivity. It's not the worst, but the better you can have broadband connectivity, that helps every business.
Where are the gaps, Eric? Do you have last mile issues at the end of the roads, or is it
I mean, I think we're all at the mercy of Xfinity at best, I guess, and it's not a lot of options, and it's certainly there's more options download than there is upload. I just think capacity, you know, as everyone's kind of doing this, it's not just about downloading anymore. Now we all have to project up our video streams too. So just being able to do work or communicate, kind of everybody needs it.
Yeah, it's a way of life. If people have had their chance to say something, you can lower your hand. I'm going to go to Larry and Cynthia. What are your sense of challenges?
We have a number of buildings in our North Village that are abandoned or not being utilized at all, just sitting there falling apart.
Abandoned buildings in Londonderry. Are they old, or what's their shape?
Well, for example, the owner has just decided not to be open anymore, and you know, it's for sale, but at a price that's kind of pie in the sky.
Is the word you're looking for.
You know, there's some that have been empty for a long time, Cynthia.
Right, and then the little Squeaks house, which is right next to the mill, you know, that's been there forever, and it's just deteriorating year after year after year. It's a historic place, but the owner owns the mill and the Squeaks house, so it's just.
Okay. Mary Lines.
Well, I was going to say that, but the loss of our physical structures due to flood or fire has sorely affected the appearance of our main street, and it needs to be upgraded.
Okay, thank you. Gary Kleiman.
Yeah, hi. And I'm not best placed to offer this comment because I'm not a small business owner, but my understanding from a Project Londonderry meeting is that maybe there was a Chamber of Commerce or local organization entity for small businesses that maybe is not as active anymore. So I think an organizing entity that could help put together recreation or tourism packages is a need or a challenge that we don't have that. Right?
So there is no Chamber of Commerce for Londonderry. Is there a business association? Yes, Georgiana?
Londonderry recently rejoined the Ludlow Area Chamber of Commerce, okay, which is the nearest Chamber of Commerce.
Do you have an economic development committee?
We do not. Well, I mean, I think the recently formed Project Londonderry may be moving in that direction.
Okay. I want to go to Erwin Cooperberg. Erwin, you're muted. That should be on the cover of the Time magazine shift for the year. You're muted.
Okay, so I just want to expand on a couple of points that were already made about the aesthetics of our village. Earlier, a few of us talked about the centrality of our businesses, that people have to come here for our supermarket, for our drugstore, for our transfer station, for our medical clinic, in addition to the fact that Route 11 is one of the few east-west roads in the state, and Route 100, one of the few north-south roads, as well as one of the prettiest and most heavily touristed roads. And yet, when you come through our town, it's not very attractive. It's not a pretty little Vermont village. I'm not sure exactly how much we can do to change that, but I think that is an issue that needs to be addressed in terms of looking at the overall our growth opportunities, especially within the realm of the existing businesses.
Right, thanks, everyone. Joel?
you were talking about Chamber of Commerce. We do not have that anymore, but we do have a Rotary Club, which is ready, willing, and able to help wherever we can, and we do to the limited extent that we are able.
Great, we'll consider that an asset. Jacqueline Gold. Jacqueline, do you have, you're muted if you were trying to speak. Hearing nothing, I'm going to go to Darcy Duval. Darcy, what's another challenge?
I think one of the main challenges too is that there's no money. The municipality, not through necessarily a fault of theirs, there's no money to restore the town hall. There's no money to save the old historic buildings. There's no money to make Londonderry charming and pretty with a false front on the supermarket. And I think until they somehow issue bonds or find a way to fund these projects in a serious way, especially for sewer and water, I don't really know how much community activism can change all that.
All right, well, thanks for sharing that. Paul Abraham.
So video does get you pushed to the top of the list. Hi, Nancy. Anyway, the lack of affordable housing is a pretty significant item for us.
Okay. I'm not definitely trying to be fair. I can only see those who have hands raised, and I can't see people whose screens are black, so it's hard for me to know. Jacqueline Gold. Paula Pelkey.
Hi, good afternoon. I think to kind of come on what Paul was just saying, the lack of affordable housing, and then because we do have small local businesses, which is certainly a boon for us in so many ways, it also is a challenge because we can't offer wages that will match what our housing issue is. And so, you know, I've been here for 7 years now, and the biggest challenge that I had when I was trying to move here was to be able to find long-term affordable housing that was within the cost of what I was going to be making working at a local business. And I think that those two things are so imbalanced that it's really hard for us to draw in, you know, new residents and new people who could help bolster this economy.
Yeah, what percentage of housing is second homes? Probably at least 50%, huh?
Too much really in the grand spectrum of things.
Okay. Other challenges, Larry or Cynthia?
I would just like to address the affordable housing goes to a bunch of other things. One of the things is walkability. Developers of affordable housing are looking for infrastructure so that their investment in affordable housing, when they're looking for investors who will join them in building affordable housing, they're located in a spot where people can walk to a centralized town or village and walk to all the services that they need, because people who generally need affordable housing, a lot of them cannot afford an automobile as well. So that's a big issue. In addition to what George had mentioned in terms of transportation.
And we will have another session on housing and transportation right after this one. Nancy Jensen?
Hi there. I'm in real estate, and I think one of the challenges is over this crazy last 9 months when we have seen an influx of people and certainly helping the demographics of Vermont, but can we keep them? Or do we have the gyms? Do we have the restaurants when we open up? Are we going to be able to service them as well? And the other thing, going back to the employment situation, is unless you clean houses or do caretaking, it's very hard for a local person to make any money around here. So we have really limited options.
Yeah, that's tough. I noticed some people are putting their thoughts in the chat, and that's perfectly okay. We're going to gather all the material from this whole call and consolidate lists of ideas that come from you. So it's great to use the chat if you'd like to. Matthew Mosher.
I just wanted to, remind, it always comes up with second homeowners and all that. You got to remember all the economic, and to go back to the money, if you want the economics, you want the growth, that portion of it comes from these second homeowners. They support the ski industries. They support companies like mine. They support, probably more than half of the market. So don't forget that part of and not to mention now a lot of the kids are going to school here, but additionally, a lot of those people support. Without that group, we do not exist. And all the things you want to offer will not be possible without that group. So you got to be very cautious of that balance. We're a service community unless we change exactly what we're doing, but we service that threshold of people wanting to be here at peace in Vermont. And if we don't embrace that, then we're going to be in trouble.
Thanks very much.
I'm butting in here.
No, Sharon's next, so you'll have to wait.
Okay.
Sharon.
Hi. To Nancy's point about not having that many jobs here or good paying jobs, a lot of people travel to work, complicating the whole idea of childcare. There has been a challenge for a really long time. The collaborative has been working diligently to try to help facilitate local childcare for people who do work out of town, who sometimes have to go in one direction for childcare and then another direction for work, and then reverse that to come back home. I mean, it's just really complicated.
Terrific, or terrific as a challenge, not a great thing. I want to turn a corner in just a second. We're going to start saying what should be done for the future of Londonderry around economic development, jobs, village center. And it could be an organizational thing that could be done, or a specific project that should be done that would be fundamental. We're not really going to debate these things. We're just building a list, like a list on the wall that Alyssa is going to capture, and we'll bring it back to you for prioritization later. So tonight we're not making decisions or debating, we're just getting ideas out. I know that I missed that one gentleman. Are you still there who wanted to share something? But I'm not sure if you're hand raising.
Yes, one of the assets that we have, and particularly for this changing environment in terms of how and where people work from, is Burton.
Mm-hmm.
We are one of the schools, one of the areas that goes to Burton as of right, and it's a big asset.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the overall equation that we ought to put in here in terms of attracting folks.
Excellent.
That's all.
Yeah, thanks so much. So let's turn a corner and let's begin to say, what's your idea of what could be done? We've got a half hour. What are the ideas that would advance the economy, would build jobs, would enhance the village centers, and would be things that could be done by this community? And you're not voting tonight, you're not saying things the select board should do. You're really trying to say, what could the community do to advance? And I'll start with Patty Eisenhower. Patty.
Expand the zoning for businesses to get started.
Build a larger zoning area?
Yeah, I think our zoning is limited for business expansion.
Okay, thanks. Eric.
Hi, this is not an earth-shattering one, but it's not an expensive one either. There was a lot of talk about the bike trail along West River, and there's a lot of other hiking trails. There's even like a little loop up by the library. I think just having a map that shows how centralized we are to all of these natural assets that we talked about is kind of an easy printable thing to do, and be like, hey, there's these biking trails and hiking trails and all these things. I don't think we even have a way to easily communicate out to people about all the assets, and that would be kind of an easy thing to do.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. We've seen lots of towns do those. Larry and Cynthia.
To address the map that's being worked on, the thing I would say would be to create a centralized, identifiable village center, especially in the North Village, that's walkable. so that there's some traffic calming. So it's not just a drive-through as fast as you can get through. And people can get from one end of the village to the other on foot. Those who don't own cars or would prefer to walk, especially during the winter time. I think, you know, possibly even burying cable and electric underneath in a certain area, street lamps, and just a streetscape that would identify the village as a village and slow traffic down. That might go a long ways to helping some other things as well.
And this would be in the North Village, Larry, did you say?
I think in both villages there's a need, but I think more so in the North Village. Route 11 east-west is pretty much a straight shot through.
If you were walking today, would you need to walk in the road?
You would, yes. And especially in the wintertime, it's a real challenge.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Jeffrey and then to Jeremy. Jeffrey.
Yeah, partnering with Tri-Mountain Towns for transportation, public transportation.
Is Tri-Mountain Towns like a public transportation system?
No, with Jamaica, into Manchester, Dorset, wherever we gotta go, so.
Okay, great. Jeremy Dworkin.
Yeah, following up on what Larry said, years ago, we had federal money granted. This is decades ago. We had federal money granted to put in sidewalks and fashion street lights and other things all along the road on Route 11. There was resistance to the point where we had a town vote that turned out to be 50-50. And it was exactly 50-50. That went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, it's not a win, it's a tie. So we lost the ability to put in sidewalks and streetlights and other things with federal money in downtown Londonderry. This is the North Village.
Yeah.
It would be nice to try to restore that process, because I think we do have to have sidewalks and we do have to have streetlights in the village so that those businesses, when they do open up, can be more inviting and safe.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Carolyn Scully.
I know this has been brought up once, but better internet. Where I am on the Low Lake Road, we do not have Infinity, or can I get Comcast? And the internet is very, it's ridiculous. And I think you have more, as for business, as for all these students that are in school, there has to be more options for a faster internet.
Okay, thank you very much. Mary Lyons.
Yes, I think it's important to shatter the myth that improvements will raise taxes. In fact, if we attract more businesses, the taxes will go down because we'll have a stronger tax base.
Okay, and your idea is to attract more businesses and reduce the tax rate?
Yes.
Yeah. Gail Mann.
Yeah, yes. So I'd like to build on, I know early on somebody mentioned the whole Burton story and the development of the snowboard here. It's a great story. And we've talked often about creating an incubator space. And maybe now it's not snowboard, but you could have things that are around creation for people to create, to build whatever, but even around food products, because we have those kinds of resources. So an incubator space where you'd have people working, doing things. On the front space, you could actually have a little retail where people could sell things. And then the other thing, I think a WeWork space, and that gets back into the broadband, the internet issues, but we have a lot of people. I had people approaching me left and right who are up here now. Where can I go to be with other people? And they've moved back to wherever they came from so they could be with people while they work. So.
Yeah, all these digital economy people, they want to mix with other creatives.
Yeah, they just want to be around people.
Yeah. Okay, Matthew Mosher. Matthew.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back and touch base. You know, you talk about the big thing is employees. You want to start businesses and all that. Well, I've had a business here for coming up on 15 years. In the last 2 years, I have assigned an advertisement 365 days a year we can hire people. 365. The only way we get people is we have to bring them in from other places. So we all want to, there's a lot of business owners on here, and I'm sure, you know, that's a fact. The ski resorts have to bring in people. We as a company are going to have to bring in people. So someone said it before, one, they have to have places to live. Two, you have to have the workers. There's just not enough employees, but that's also a national problem.
Yeah, so in terms of the action, you're really calling for more housing, Matthew, or is that what, or a recruitment?
I mean, that's a key part of it. There has to be affordable housing. But again, a lot of these jobs are well-paid jobs.
Yeah,
so they're well within the realm.
Are there other things that the people of Londonderry could do, or that businesses could do as together to attract workforce, or is it something that each business has to wrestle with?
It's probably an individual business problem, but it, you know, you do like we, you know, and we look at it, you know, you pretty much have to almost to the point where you have to buy housing.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Gary Kleiman.
Yeah, I mean, building on the idea that we have tremendous recreational assets, that we're so dependent on the tourism economy, and that, you know, we are trying to establish a improved sense of place for the village centers. It seems like if we did have, maybe Rotary can do this, or a local chamber of commerce that focuses more on Londonderry, we could create some, you know, either guided tour packages or ski and stay packages or fall foliage tours. If we could develop a coordinated marketing campaign that would sort of lift all boats, you know, the hotels would benefit, the restaurants would benefit, the ski, either Nordic areas or Alpine areas would benefit if we just develop these coordinated packages.
Gary, Londonderry doesn't do that, or the, you know, Magic Mountain, other folks don't get together and do that stuff? Not so much, huh? Okay, Georgianne.
So this is kind of a big, complicated piece, but statewide, I think the pandemic has demonstrated that Vermont's reliance on tourism to drive our economy is a really bad model. And the way that, one way that that has negatively impacted us locally is that so much of our available real estate is being scooped up by people with money who aren't even necessarily using that real estate for primary housing. They're using it to make money running Airbnbs. And that is negatively impacting the already critical issue of affordable housing. So I know there's going to be another breakout session on affordable housing, but the biggest thing to my mind is affordable housing, affordable housing, affordable housing.
All right.
And a laundromat.
And a laundromat. Someone needs to do that. Is there anyone organized to do that kind of work? Is there an affordable housing team in town? Yes, Cynthia? Here.
There's no affordable housing organization within Londonderry, but the Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust is you know, they do a lot of development of affordable housing in addition to first-time home buyers, helping them find and identify properties and then, you know, purchasing them, and also repairs on older homes, especially for elderly people who may not be able to afford a new roof. They can help them get a grant to repair the roof, and then they actually contract to get the work done. So there is, we need to reach out to them and bring them into the conversation.
So that's the action idea part of it, is that they're there, but someone we need to organize and invite them in to be partners potentially. Katrina.
And again, one of the major things that you need to have is some infrastructure. Like if a project has sewer and water available, it's a much higher on the priority list than a town that has nothing like that.
It may be impossible to build if there's not. We were recently in Montgomery, and they can't build affordable housing. They can't expand their housing stock. Katrina Fleck. Katrina, you've been waiting.
Hi, it's you know, it's repeating what quite a few, including Matt Mosher, have been saying. You know, I've been at Jamaica Cottage Shop for 13 years now, and I mean, when I started there, 8 to 10 employees on average. Now we're upwards of 70, you know, and still growing. But that growth, I'm trying to recruit at least, between 12 and 15 positions right now. Where do I find those people? I watch the Londonderry forums, and people complain about second homeowners or people kind of moving to the area and not understanding the ways in the area, and it comes down to that movement into our area and this new kind of growth with the new homeowners and people kind of seeking almost refuge by moving to Vermont right now. And I'm hopeful that it's going to build upon that labor pool that we're really lacking. You drive down the road and Hunter Excavating, I see signs out there too when I'm driving home, hiring, and that's not the only one. It's everywhere.
Yeah,
and so what do we do about that?
That's what I'm asking you. We're trying to put a list of ideas for action. So let's ask everyone, what are things that could be done? I'm going to go to Emmett Dunbar.
Yeah, hi. Well, I had two different subjects. On the housing subject, it's definitely very, very important. And I think that what I've learned is although Vermont's like 99% occupied to the most point, this median income level of housing, not Section 8 and not higher income, but this median level, this 35,000 to 135,000, 40, 60,000 a year type of a thing, that demographic for people to look for a home in that category, that a home to rent that most people earning that money would like to rent. That is a very difficult sector in real estate. So there are a lot of big companies are investing in large developments like that. It typically seems to be a lower economic, and then a higher. So how they work together. And so the mountains have bought some old inns and different things to house their seasonal employees. Maybe there's a way to do the same thing. And maybe there's a way to create, to work with the mountains or work with larger buildings to create housing. The second subject, just to throw it out there to the group for economic development, is last year in town meeting, we passed a resolution to be open to the development of retail cannabis in the cannabis industry in Londonderry. And recently the select board has agreed that they need to move faster forward and set a date for a vote. The select board has also wanted to move forward and project to have a 1% options tax. So economic development wise, the cannabis industry budding, a 1% options tax, and the idea of having a retail opportunity here, to have a retail store here to mix with recreation. It wouldn't be a St. Albans hub dispensary, but one that people would use combined with recreation, a little bit different. And I hope that the select board moves forward, and I hope that the special meeting happens and we have this vote so we have this beautiful economic opportunity with cannabis. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmett. I'm going to ask people to try to be a little shorter because we got a lot of people who want to speak. We've got about 10 more minutes to get as many ideas on the table as we can. I'm assuming everyone who's got their hand raised electronically is waiting to speak. If you're not, please lower your hand. I'm going to go to Kelly Capon, who's got her hand up. Kelly?
Yeah, I really think until we solve the water problem for downtown Londonderry housing, anything, we have solved nothing. I think even though historically I understand people are very passionate about it, but until we solve that problem, we solve no problems.
Okay, thank you so much. So that needs to be solved. Other positive ideas and steps forward. Jeremy Dworkin. You're muted. And then Dwight Johnson will be next.
I'm all set.
Okay, Dwight Johnson.
I'd just like to emphasize, I think, the importance of the select board being behind this effort. And I'm glad to see there are a couple of members on the call today. If we're going to succeed, it's going to require really commitment from the select board and financial assistance. And I know that's hard because the town is strapped financially, but I'm concerned that we will not succeed without strong support from the select board.
Okay, Mary Lyons.
I think one of this goes back to challenges, but it's what do we do with a segment of our population who really doesn't want change. They think everything's fine.
That does sound like more of a challenge than an idea for action, but I'll let you have it. Nancy Jensen.
Thank you. Something that's sort of a little different tact here, and that's that there's a difference between North Londonderry and South Londonderry. Historically, and I mean, I was married to Londonderry fellow. Now I'm living in South Londonderry. It was a really big deal for me to change my zip code. It would be great if we could find a way to bring South London and North Londonderry together and maybe have a central community center, you know, on the Luinetti land. I have no history on that. I don't know what's possible. Something to bring the two villages together.
Great, thank you. Sharon Crossman, and we'd love to hear from people who haven't had a chance to speak yet. So if you haven't and you want to raise your hand, you can go to the reactions button, hit it, and hands will come up and you'll be able to choose. Sharon Crossman, and then Joel will be next.
I have spoken, but I just think it's important to remember, Nancy touched on it. We do have a South Village that has a different sort of culture and character a bit than the North Village. It does not have two main thoroughfares running through it and meeting up. And that also, sometimes it's not the big things or the fancy things or even the visible things that will make the most difference, as in wastewater and basic services like childcare and affordable housing.
Okay. Joel, do you have an idea of something that should be done to advance the future of Londonderry?
Yes, to pick up on what Carolyn was talking about, we need digital infrastructure. It seems to me that Londonderry, this whole area is perfect for people who want to have a software company or such, because it's a no impact company that is a high paying operation. And the only way we're going to get the infrastructure is for the state to help us do it. And I don't think that there's enough of an emphasis on the state part to get these people who do all the towers and stuff to make it happen.
I'm sure we'll hear reflections from visiting team members about this, because everyone's talking about it in Vermont. Our delegation's talking about it. The legislature and governor are talking about it. It feels like we're at a time of real change. So I'm looking at no more hands raised right now. We've got about 10 more minutes, and we'd love to catch you. Just imagine Alyssa's list right now. There's probably 40 significant block ideas of ways that the town of Londonderry could move forward. The people of Londonderry could work together to move forward. Are there things that haven't been said, things that may not be big ticket items, but that maybe people could do with their collective labor? Projects that would enrich the community's economic development, jobs, village center, coordinations that could happen. I'm going to go to Roger Meltzer and then Allison.
Actually, it's Jasmine Meltzer. I'm Roger's wife.
Hi,
so we've owned a house for 20 years, but I still, and okay, we're second homeowners, but we spend a lot of time up in Vermont. I always feel like I never know what's going on. There's no central dissemination of information. When we had a sort of Chamber of Commerce, it was kind of hopeless in my opinion. So at the beginning of this COVID, I wanted to know where were places that one could walk as a senior. And there really is no information. You don't know if it's legal to walk by the river or not legal to walk by the river. So I just wish there was more sharing of information, because it seems to me like it's either people who grew up here and went to school here, that they know everything, and everybody else is sort of on the outside looking in. So I just think there should be more centralized information.
Thank you so much. Allison Hopkins.
I was just thinking it would be great to use the momentum that's being gathered here today to create task forces that could work with the select board to move some of these projects forward, perhaps on grant writing or facilitating some of these ideas. A good opportunity could be a sign-up sheet at town meeting.
No, you must have missed the beginning of the meeting. This is a 3-month process, Allison, and it's aimed at just that. Other folks who want to share, Darcy Duval.
I think we also need to bring in somehow, find something that's appetizing to the younger generations. As I look at all of our wonderful faces, we're missing a huge segment, and we're losing this same segment to moving away for higher jobs. And we really need them to participate, to tell us what they need and what they want so that we can keep them and involve them.
Yeah, we would love help. The steering committee worked hard on that, and if others can help reach out to young people to invite them to the next session, that would be really terrific. Eric?
Yeah, again, nothing earth shattering, but just to say, to kind of add on to Allison's, I know there's a 3-month project, but talking about the momentum, I've heard a lot of great things from people here, and I'd love to know how to get in touch with them. So maybe there's a way that if you want to volunteer, I'm happy to volunteer my mobile number and my email. But if other people who are on the group wanted to kind of be able to be in touch with other people, I think it would be great for you guys to help coordinate this so we don't only meet once every month or every 3 months or whatever.
Once this is going, there's going to be a huge sharing of information, Eric, that will be steady on. And there's a Facebook page now to gather this, but Jenna should be sharing more with everyone who's participated tonight very, very quickly. I see Gail Mann has an idea.
Well, no, I just want to speak out that we do have Project Londonderry right now, which has 4 different task forces addressing many of these same issues. So yeah. Please come to us, come and join us. But, just stepping back, I think on your other question, I think I was thinking about if we want to keep the young people and we want to get some younger families here, some way to energize the entrepreneurial spirit. I go back to that a lot. But, if it's a little awards, things that we can do with the state, various ways that we could package things to attract people to come here. There have to be people living in New York City right now who want to leave and want to create a new life. And we're not tapping into that at all.
Okay, thank you. Darcy Duval?
Sorry, I gotta take my hand down.
And Joel, your hand is still up. Did you want to say something? Is there anyone else who hasn't had a chance to share an idea, a burning idea, something that could be done to make to improve the Londonderry Village centers? I see someone on the phone, 1609. Do you want to speak? No? Okay. Other last thoughts of people on?
I'm just going to speak up. I don't seem to have the hand screen. I just wanted to comment that the intersection of Route 11 and 100 is really, I think, a key opportunity for us to do something from a business point of view that, it's just a key location in terms of traffic flow and visibility for our town. So I think that's an area to focus on for economic development.
Okay, thank you. Larry and Cynthia.
So I just want to mention too that, excuse me, the town has received or was granted a municipal planning grant. So that's a starting place for a plan for working in the North Village to kind of create a streetscape that's more welcoming. So it's a first step, and that's something that Project Londonderry has been involved in. So, and the Planning Commission.
Terrific. I see Guarino Savio. You're still muted. There you go.
Yes. Considering there are so many second homes, can we find a way to get second home owners more involved with the town problems? Because they could be another asset that we should count on.
I'm here now.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you. Emmett Dunbar. You're muted, Emmett.
Yep, thanks. I just remember going to a good farm workshop years ago that said, work with what you have. And I want to applaud and appreciate our town parks and town land. For the number of people we have living here, we actually have a great deal of town parks and town land, with one exception that they're all outdoor and seasonal. I think if hearing everything, obviously we don't have necessarily the money in hand to do it, but a year-round or a winter recreational space, a closed space. We have the tennis center in town, but it's just, that might be a great way to bring all the community together to make a shared space that works in the cold months.
Terrific.
Darcy, youth, particularly with Darcy, speaking of the youth, that's a real youth thing.
Okay, thanks. Darcy.
We don't have a youth center.
Darcy.
My husband, Michael Goodbody.
Oh, hi, Michael.
Hi, good evening. You know, we got this great asset down at the corner of Route 100 and Route 11 and called the Mountain Marketplace. However, the landlords of that place have kept that parking lot like a third world country. I have dropped my car, you know, the bottom of my car has been scraping on the pavement, dropping into holes that they don't fill up. And I think we need to try and get these guys to spruce that place up, because I think a lot of people choose not to go down there because of the shape the parking lot's in.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to call on Ben Freeman, and then we're going to go to a little bit of a sharing of thoughts based on what everyone has said from the visiting team, to reflect a little bit about some of the potential directions that they've heard. So Ben and Julia.
Yeah, we were just going to chime in about, you know, Floodbrook School as an asset. It is indoors and they do have some of that recreational space. And also just about the younger people and younger families. I mean, this time of night from 6 to 9 is not the greatest time for young working families to participate in a dialogue like this. And so having something that also offers childcare or food to bring in a more equitable representation of that age group might be great.
Yeah.
You know, just adding in on the idea of, you know, Floodbrook as an asset and how to have it, make it more of a community asset, to, you know, partner with the school to bring in speakers, to access the library, to use the outdoor fields for pickup league games, outdoor concerts. There's just a lot of possibilities to be done in partnership.
Terrific. Thank you for bringing that up, you folks. So it feels like there's a tremendous energy of all the ideas coming from this call. And we've had 91, at one point, more than that, people on this one focus forum. There's another one going on at the same time. So there's a lot of power in the room with ideas. I'm going to suggest that if you get another idea, we can't just keep going. Go ahead and drop it in the chat. There's also a survey that's going around in the community. You're going to get other chances to throw your ideas in, but feel free to throw them into the chat. We'll be digesting everything together and bring back the list of big ideas that you had at the next meeting next month. But I want to go around really quickly and allow people on the visiting team to share reflections on what they heard, what seems most important. And I'm going to have to ask them to take a minute or so each, because we've only got about 12 minutes left. I'm going to start with Richard Amore from the Agency of Commerce. Richard?
Thanks, Paul. It's great to see a lot of old friends down in Londonderry. I recall a first visit I did back in 2013 on a snow evening talking about village revitalization. And it's amazing to see how far you guys have come from, you know, 8 years ago or 7 years ago, and the amount of social capital and local leadership with Project Londonderry, the town, and everybody on the call tonight, working to improve the village, or both villages for that matter, and the community at large. You know, all I'd like to say is, you know, we offer a lot of resources from planning, supporting the master plan that you guys are kicking off for the Main Street study, as well as, you know, updating zoning or any kind of community economic development needs you guys have. Feel free to reach out to me as you have, and keep up the good work.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Ted Brady from the Agency of Commerce. You with us, Ted?
Sure am. Thanks, Paul. And thanks to Richard. I work with Richard. He's the smartest man in state government. Let me assure you of that. First, the greatest thing to come out of Londonderry is not Burton. It's Pat Moulton, who was one of the greatest minds in economic development and used to run my agency. But she brags on this incredible community regularly. I actually spent a day down there a couple weeks ago at Magic and fell in love again with the community you have. I think what I hear is a tremendous need to engage with your second home owner community in that town. No town in Vermont has figured this out. And I don't know what it is, but that seems like a great opportunity. And to the point that you have more newcomers right now, and how do you keep them? How do you keep these young families in your school instead of them going back to wherever they might have come from pre-COVID? That'd be a great opportunity to explore deeper into. I hear a conversation about infrastructure, whether it be outdoor recreation infrastructure or water and wastewater infrastructure, those typical things. There clearly needs to be something done to help these villages thrive. You can't do anything without making that next step. And I hear a tremendous opportunity to strike something that can solve your recruitment issues, can solve your retail attraction, bringing in some more retail business, bringing in more young people, which is outdoor recreation, outdoor recreation, and outdoor recreation. You folks are poised. I'll finish it with saying there are very few communities of 1,500 people in the state of Vermont that can boast a thing like the Jamaica Cottage Shop, a functioning market community that you still have retail operations and a healthcare center. There are very few towns of your size in rural Vermont that can brag on that. So it's about building. So congrats. I can't wait to work with you. And Richard has it spot on. You've demonstrated the social capital you need. So let's work together to take the right next steps.
Thanks, Ted. Ben Doyle, the new CEO for Preservation Trust of Vermont.
Thanks, Paul. I'm just so incredibly impressed by the number of people that are on this Zoom call and the list of assets. Like, I felt like it could go on and on and on. You folks are incredible. And I think it's really, I guess I only have two pieces of advice. One is to marshal those assets effectively and get them working together. I tried to break them down into different buckets, and I heard a lot about the food economy, the recreation economy, and some talk about arts and culture as well. I think there's great examples like up in the Northeast Kingdom of those different sectors of the economy, really intentionally growing the connections between them to strengthen all of them. So I think if those groups aren't meeting right now, they should be. And then the second thing that I would just say is there's definitely, you can sense the tension, which I think is common in Vermont between second homeowners, locals. The bottom line of it is a better and more vibrant community helps everyone. So everyone should be invested in it. And I think that that's really what I would encourage you to focus on is how do we make this better for everyone? And that will attract people and make their community sustainable. But on a nuts and bolts level, it's about infrastructure, things like wastewater, about affordable housing, and your kind of historic built environment. And there's a lot of people on this call that are ready to help with those things. So you're doing a great job and we're anxious to work with you.
Excellent, Ben. Rebecca Ellis, we have to go faster and faster as we get to the end, or else because Margaret's going to cut us all off. Rebecca.
Right. Yeah, so I just want to pick up on the need for wastewater infrastructure that a number of people mentioned. And I wanted to point out that the Department of Environmental Conservation has a project looking at decentralized wastewater systems. It's called the Village Wastewater Solutions Initiative. There's over 150 villages in Vermont that do not have sewer systems and that are looking at sort of expanded septic systems at a village scale. And this project is being supported by the Northern Borders Regional Commission, which is gave a grant to DEC, and the commission has been supported by the delegation. So as the delegation, and I work for Congressman Welch's office, we're really thrilled that Northern Borders Regional Commission is looking at the decentralized wastewater systems, and I encourage the community to look at that as a possible solution.
Thank you, Rebecca. Sarah Lang from Brattleboro Development Corporation.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us here. We work really closely with the town of Londonderry pretty regularly. And I know Project Londonderry, has been working really hard to do a lot of these things that were mentioned on the call. I guess the one thing I'll mention is that You know, look at the amount of people that are here. Like, you are the people that are going to get these things done. You know, the visiting team here is just to help and provide advice and direction, but ultimately, you know, you are the people that will, you know, do these really great projects. And to that point, my program that I run, the Southern Vermont Economy Project, puts on trainings for community members to help them move a needle on the project. And I can share information later on that, but we all have the power to do that. So I hope everyone contributes.
Thank you, Sarah. John Michael Muse from USDA Rural Development.
Thanks, Paul. God, what an amazing community, you know, and I heard about all the assets that you were just rattling off without even thinking about them. They just came in a flood, and it just reminds me of confluence. You have so many things coming together and going for that community that your success is imminent. And, you know, some of the most important things that I heard, because, you know, in economics, you have a infinite amount of places to be with a finite amount of time and resources. And I think your village centers, your zoning, your infrastructure, that's the core that everything else can build off of. And I think doubling down on those efforts, outreach and marketing, you know, you can't tell your story enough to everybody because we're so inundated with information. So I think, you know, getting the word out about your community will just attract more people there, but then having the infrastructure to be able to handle that. And then what's most promising is I heard Cynthia talk about you have a municipal planning grant. That's amazing. That is really cool because municipal planning grants turn into implementation grants. And that's key for all that you're talking about. And USDA Rural Development has resources to build a community from the ground up. And I look forward to more discussion on how we can become involved and get behind all the great efforts that you all outlined there.
Great to have you with us. Great to have you with us. Gus Seelig from the Vermont Housing Conservation Board. Gus. You with us, Gus?
Thanks for having us tonight. As I listened, I thought your greatest asset wasn't your long list, but the energy that's on this call and in this room tonight. It's really impressive. And I guess I'd just say, it sounds like you have tremendous recreation assets. I thought I heard one person say, but not everybody knows about them or where they are. So that's something easy and not expensive to fix. I know we were involved years ago with expanding Lowell Lake State Park and more recently with the Glebelands. You've already identified the issues around workforce, the need for affordable housing, and the reality that it's not impossible, but much easier to build housing when you have infrastructure. And I would just suggest you think about a committee that focuses on those issues. We were recently at a community visit that involved 4 towns, and they were looking at the issue of housing together. That may be worth, I was in Weston last fall, and they were expressing the same need for housing. So you may want to look at it, not just in terms of Londonderry, but regionally. And we'd look forward to having made conservation investments in Londonderry, look forward to the opportunity to work with you on affordable housing.
Thanks, Gus. Great to have you with us. Gabrielle Sestari.
It's Gabriel Sester. Hey, everyone. I just want to echo what a few other people have said, that this is an event that's really reflective of a very engaged and sincere community. And I think you all should be pretty proud of yourselves for that. Just really quickly, I just want to point out the link that I just shared in the chat. This is one of the programs that we run in partnership with the USDA, the Community Facilities Technical Assistance Program. And that provides, you know, early stage technical assistance support to town facilities, municipal facilities, nonprofit organizations. And I'll probably be reaching out to a few of the organizations that you all mentioned. I'll be following up with them individually, but yeah, please do take a look at that and reach out to me as you need to. Thank you.
We'll be bringing you back, Gabriel, when we get to when they've set priorities and are gearing up for action as well. John Tracy from Senator Leahy's office. John?
Thanks, Paul. I'll be really quick. I spent a moderate amount of time in land growth, so I'm coming down in Londonderry between the IGA and the hardware store, and I can appreciate the need for the streetscape I think it may be time to revisit that, because I go to the farmer's market and, you always got to kind of tiptoe going up the street there. And even as you're driving through, when you go to stop to go somewhere, there's always a backup with traffic. You've got so much potential with year-round recreation, which I think is fantastic, and that attracts young people. And I just look at the rejuvenation of Magic Mountain. There was a period of time where it was somewhat dormant. That's back again. And again, the issue, like Paul referenced Montgomery, wastewater, it's a challenge, but if there are ways you can have some type of reason, like Rebecca mentioned, if there's a way to address that, that might help the development. But I think you've got a lot of potential. I love it down there. I grew up in Springfield. I love Land Grove. I love Londonderry. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, John. Mia Watson.
Hi there. Yeah, so I was just really impressed by how well the community has really narrowed in on its assets and its challenges. I agree from a housing perspective, which is so important to economic development, that wastewater is a challenge, but I think it's important to focus on, what can you do? What sort of zoning changes, even moderate ones, could you make to make housing more welcome in your community? What sort of minor changes, like a housing trust fund, could you do to provide even just a little bit of money to make available for projects? So like Gus said, I definitely would recommend doing a housing committee to keep this work going and incorporate it into economic development more broadly. Thanks.
Okay, and finally, Sue Westa. Sue with us?
Well, I don't think I can add too much to what everyone said so far, and considering we're almost done, good luck tonight.
Yeah, we're almost done. We're going to get boomed out of here any second.
Yeah.
Yes, cold dream, but not too bad.
You've been reading my mail.
Yeah, Londonderry is such a great place. So it's one of my common routes on my motorcycle is to go up 100 and come through Londonderry. They sound like they're on a roll. This is an exciting visit to be on.
Yeah.
Back, Paul.
Yeah. Is Jenna in this room yet?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, there you are.
Hi.
Great.
Everyone's back.
So Jenna, what are our instructions for now?
Yes. So thank you for working with us through the sending to breakout rooms. I'm glad we all made it where we wanted to go. That was our first time doing this. So we're learning as we go. But we are going to do that again one more time. Let me just remind you of what the topics are for this next breakout. We'll shift conversations to focus on one breakout room will focus on housing and transportation. And then the next, and the other one is recreation, health, and wellness. So right now, Margaret is setting up 2 rooms. Nick's putting those in the chat as well. And when we hit join breakout rooms again, we will be able to choose. So remember, we learned that you want to scroll down through the list and find on the right, the little in that box where it says join next to those topics, and you'll choose those. Also, it seemed like a lot of people got left in the waiting in this main space to get assigned. So we're gonna do a little exercise that will help Margaret to put you into breakout rooms more quickly. And Margaret, what would you like people to use, 1 and 2?
Yeah, I was gonna say use a 1 in front of, if you could rename yourself, if you don't automatically, if you can't see it on your screen to go, rename yourself and put a 1 in front if you're going to housing and transportation, and a 2 in front if you're going to recreation, health, and wellness. So that would help me I don't have to then go through and ask each of you where you want to go.
Yeah, and so to clarify, don't put it in the chat. You're going to want to rename yourself. And so to do that, what you're going to want to do is find yourself on the screen, find your picture or your name, and then right click on it and you can select rename. And that will let you put a 1 or a 2 in the beginning. And you can see some people starting to model it. You see 2, Kevin, 1, Georgianne, 2. So that will help as Margaret, if you are left in the main room, Margaret can say where you're gonna go. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, hang in there and Margaret will send you to one of the breakouts.
And look at the wise guy, Ted Brady.
And I wanna know why Ted has a 3.
Really nice, Ted.
He's going on his own.
That's really helping to move things along here. All right. Otherwise, for those of you And Nick is giving us further instruction. If you can't right click, click the 3 little dots in the upper right-hand corner of your picture tile. So there's a couple different ways to select that rename option. Looks like a lot of people are figuring it out. Again, hang in here. We'll get you in the right breakout room and we'll get started up. But if you get the join breakout button, go ahead and click that, find the room and hit join. And that's the way to go. Thank you everyone for working through this with us. So 1, housing and transportation, 2, recreation, health, and wellness. We ready to go, Margaret?
I'm ready. I'll send you all over.
All right. See you there, everyone.
Did that happen to other people?
It's because we're hosts, Paul. It comes with the power, but we made it here, so good to go.
You know, life's an adventure, huh? We'll wait just a couple minutes for people to come in. Boy, what a packed session we just had. Packed with ideas, with everyone in their own box. It's like concentrate, concentrate, concentrate. No one went on and gave long descriptions. They gave ideas. So we're going to come out of this with this really intense, concentrated set of ideas for the future of Londonderry. And it's going to be powerful to see the decisions that people make. We've seen people do all kinds of stuff, from developing their own daycare center to doing a full downtown redevelopment or a water sewer project, drawing in broadband. All these things are done by towns all across the state. So it's exciting to see where this may go. Looks like we're filling in. So I'm going to start. I'm Paul Costello again, and this is the Forum on Housing and Transportation. You can imagine the dialogue at the steering committee table where they're wrestling with all the issues that they want to explore in this process in this first night. And they thought about people who need housing, and they thought about people who need transportation, and the conjunction of those in terms of the way the community works together. And they thought that the two could be part of one conversation. We know different people are going to have different things to say about these, but we're going to add it all up. And remember, we're not forming a housing and transportation committee today. We're gathering ideas that will later be choices for the community to select and prioritize from, and then gear up to form working groups to drive forward and reconnect to all the resources of people who are here and way beyond, with VCRD supporting and following up with Londonderry to help you get things done over time. So really appreciate everyone being in the group tonight. And I want to start by thinking about what folks' assets are around housing and transportation. The bottom of your screen, you've got a reactions place where you can hit that, and it gives you the opportunity to raise your hand. So we'll ask people to raise your hands, and I'll call on you as best I can as I see you to share assets around housing and transportation. I'm going to start with someone who changed their name to 1, but I no longer can tell who it is. So you might want to change your names back from 1 to your actual name by going up to either the 3 bullets in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, of your own window, or right-click on your name, and it will let you type in your name again. All right, so who would like to start with an asset around transportation or housing in the community? And Alyssa is again taking dense notes to capture everything. You can also leave things in the chat. I'm going to go to Joel.
You should know that Neighborhood Connections, which we mentioned before, is actively working on transportation, and in fact is raising money to get a van. And that should be tied in very strongly with what we're doing here, so that it's one effort. And that's a great resource because they've got a lot of capability.
Terrific. The group is called Neighborhood Transportation.
No. Neighborhood Connections.
Neighborhood Connections, yes, of course. And
Neighborhood Connections. Thanks, Joel.
Nicole, do you want to add to that, Nicole, since you have your hand up too?
Yeah, I was just going to say exactly. Thank you, Joel, for the shout out. We are actively moving on a community supported transportation program. So that would include a van, trying to fill in some of the gaps between Medicaid rides and what's not offered outside medical. So there are quite a few resources around transportation. We're trying to build a program that fills the gaps in.
Terrific. Larry and Cynthia?
Well, we mentioned this before in the economic development discussion, but we do have two major routes coming through our town, 11 and then 100 north and south, 11 east and west. So we get a lot of traffic, which hopefully you could capitalize on.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Jeremy Dworkin.
Yeah, I was going to say, when we talk about housing, obviously it's connected thoroughly to the water issue. And in the last, 40 years ago, 40 or 50 years, we've had a half a dozen major floods in the area. The downtown is in a flood zone. Mm-hmm. And we've got a river running through town, and there's very little land available for wastewater systems of a community nature. It's been talked about for decades, and nobody's ever come up with a plan for wastewater that really works.
Have there been plans for wastewater that have been started but not been funded, or that sort of died on the vine?
They've been looked at, and when you look at the town of South Londonderry, for example, and the historic road along the river, there's absolutely no way that those folks could establish any reasonable septic process. They're sort of hanging on with duct tape, and the same thing is true. The same thing is true of the village itself.
Yeah, let's come back to that as a challenge, but let's also first start with assets. You've got some beautiful rivers and you've got some important roads into town. Are there other assets around housing and transportation that should be listed? And Nicola, did you want to speak again, or do you want to, your hand is still up?
I was just going to say that all the services that are not filling that gap, we do have rides for medical appointments for Medicaid folks. We do have an active Medicaid program. We also do have a program for seniors and disabled over 65. So there are some transportation resources. They're just limited, but they are there.
Great. Does someone want to do some description of the housing stock in Londonderry? What are the assets around housing that currently exist? Sharon? You're muted still.
What was the last part of your question? I had something else.
Well, go ahead and say whatever you want to say.
I was going to speak to transportation as maybe including bike ped transportation, and the fact that we have thought about and work is being done on trying to connect people via pathways to places that they want to go. And that seems like it would be an asset.
Do you have a bike ped committee? Is that what it is, Sharon?
We have a recreation working group right now that's looking at some of that. But I think it also reminds us that one of the reasons that it's pleasant or can be to travel around, whether it's on the scenic byway. We do have scenic byway along Route 100 through our villages, is that our environment is very attractive. And so that's an asset that we need to also work to preserve.
Yes, thank you so much. Nancy, other assets?
In real estate, obviously,
we're selling all kinds of homes. There's not a whole lot of stock of newer homes. That's something we should be thinking about. We do have land. And I don't know if this is an asset, but I think we need to really jump on the energy efficiency programs that are offered throughout the state to help some of our older homes get up to snuff. And many of the homes in Londonderry were built in the 60s and 70s as a result of the ski industry influx.
Yeah. Okay.
And could use some improvement.
Okay, thank you. Other descriptions of assets around housing? Is there any affordable housing? Are there any projects in the community? Is there any senior housing in the community?
I think someone in the chat put Smith Haven in.
Okay. Smith Haven is a senior living facility, or?
It's not senior living, but it's a congregate living.
Congregate housing.
Yeah, it is actually. I think it's senior and disabled.
And disabled.
Someone in the previous session said that there's some empty buildings in the downtown. Are those buildings derelict? Are they opportunities? Are they challenges? Larry and Cynthia?
I believe they're challenges. Right now, they were commercial businesses. And so I'm not sure as far as housing, whether they might be available for that. It's always a possibility, but again, it goes back to infrastructure and being able to do something specifically where they're located. And many of them are located in the floodplain. So that's a concern.
How big are the buildings? Are they important historic buildings, or are they not?
One was an old mill, which is a historic building. It was a restaurant and a bar at one point. So it does have some history. I can remember myself when it was, before it was turned into a restaurant, and actually some restoration done on it. It was pretty dilapidated then, but it needs quite a bit of work now. So I'm not sure how much value it has as a potential housing location.
Okay. Are there other properties that are, someone said there's available land around the villages. Is that true? Is it zoned for housing development, or is it not? Or is the zoning prohibitive? Is it in floodplain? Is that prohibitive? Are there other transportation assets? Are there good back roads? Do you have a good road crew? Cynthia.
This could be an asset. There is the old Dostal's Hotel at Magic Mountain, which has been considered for redevelopment, but I don't think it ever went through, but it does have water and sewer there. So it could be an asset for a possible, maybe a combined market rate and affordable housing project.
Is that an empty building?
I think some of it's used for employee housing and the other part is not usable. I don't know. Somebody would have to verify that.
Georgianne? You're muted.
There are two parts to my answer. We have an excellent road crew and we have excellent roads in town. As to the potential housing locations, there's a property currently for sale in the South Village, the old post office building that I think may have significant potential for affordable housing. There's also a complex in between the North and South Villages on Route 100, the Hearthstone complex. The owner of Grandma Miller's Bakery also owns a large barn that currently houses a couple of businesses, but also has some empty space that I think could have potential as affordable housing as well. So
cool. other assets around housing or transportation. We'll turn a corner into the challenge in terms of why it's on the list. Sharon, did you want to add something about the asset?
Yes, there are, it seems to be more and more structures in our villages that are coming up for sale. Many of them are on or eligible for the National Historic Register, but most of them also need a facelift and some of those other things we've been talking about, like wastewater and water supply, one or the other at least. So they're significantly expensive to get into. The South Derry Post Office, for instance, is really sweet inside. It has a great history. The second story has some really cool architectural features, and you know, it would be fun to do, but a quick estimate is over $500,000 to get it going, with still a chunk of it, you know, in the floodplain and just a holding tank to, you know, take care of any kind of wastewater. So that's expensive.
Yeah.
For not really knowing.
Yeah.
So that would be a good, it'd be great to have some housing there, some mixed use within the building right there in the village.
Yeah, let's come back to that one when we're talking about project potentials. Let's turn now into the challenge and opportunity side. Like, why do you suppose the steering committee wanted to have housing and transportation on the list tonight? How are they challenges for the future of Londonderry, and you know, what are the problems around transportation, and what are the problems around housing? Why is it important? Who'd like to start with that? Katrina.
Well, as an active recruiter for Jamaica Cottage Shop, you know, in our growth for many years now, one of the main issues that I have in even recruiting is the lack of housing. What we started doing just a few years ago is anytime we see an apartment or a house up for rent, I put it on a on this Word document I have. And, you know, whenever, you know, and I post it to the employees like, hey, if you're looking to get closer to work, some of them travel an hour. We do a travel stipend just to get them here. Wow. You know, there's just no housing. And, you know, I've thought of places like, you know, back when I worked for Stratton and knowing about Stratton housing, how they use places like the old Pinnacle that's, you know, just past Bromley Mountain on the top of Manchester Hill there. And I was like, how could we, you know, kind of, you know, this area a little bit closer to have something like that, and thinking about buildings that we could utilize. So I've thought about, someone mentioned Dostals, and, you know, Dostals on Magic Mountain, someone mentioned that. And I remember for even Stratton employees housing there, you know, some would have no hot water. Their locks would be broken. They wouldn't have, you know, there's just, there would be a lot of challenges there as far as would something like that or that building be suitable for that? And even if it was, you know, is that something that, obviously Stratton is a big entity here, and their housing is necessary because we are a tourism area. Right?
Yeah, there's a lot in there that we could come back to as potential action steps. I want to make sure other people get to share their sense of challenges. Yep. Shane, you want to go next?
Sure. A transportation challenge mentioned somewhat earlier was Route 11 being one of the primary east-west roads. And the amount of truck traffic, quite often we see a lot of homes being trailered across through the town, and it's just really it's quite an impact on the community from a pedestrian standpoint. You know, the road rumbles quite a bit, but we have large trucks and large truck traffic coming through the village.
It sounds like there's a study, a planning study to evaluate some of the corridor. Are there good walkways and crosswalks and structures to slow traffic and signage? And I'm seeing Larry.
No, none of that.
Larry and Cynthia are speaking volumes with their shaking. Go ahead, Larry and Cynthia.
I would just say if there's, I don't know of a single crosswalk in either village between the south and the north village.
There's no place with a pedestrian marker that lets people cross.
No, we have no sidewalks to speak of, especially in the North Village, which did at one point historically have sidewalks through town. We have a blinking red light at the intersection, or yellow light at the intersection, but we actually live on Route 111, and the speed limit is 30 miles an hour through town. And we've lived here for quite a while, and you notice that the speed is quite faster than 30 miles an hour through town. So traffic calming is a huge concern.
Is there enforcement, Larry?
No.
Pardon?
Enforcement.
We do have some limited enforcement. We have state police who are hired part-time to sit, but they generally don't stop people for speeding and that sort of thing. They pretty much sit there, and that works as the traffic calming. Others could address that better than I could in terms of what they actually do. But the other thing I was going to mention is, some sort of identifiable village or town center, as I mentioned in our other session, I think would go a long ways to towards traffic calming. Again, Route 11 is a straight shot through, and generally people the trucks and the traffic just shoot right through the town, and there's no sidewalks, nothing to really calm traffic or get people to slow down.
I get it. Okay, Nicole?
Yeah, I was just going to say that there aren't any fixed routes. There's no transportation that are on fixed routes that come out to our towns, any of the mountain towns here. So in terms of fixed routes, there's no transportation right now. Oh, sorry, you're in challenges. And then also in terms of individual rides, they're entirely income or age dependent. And they're only for medical rides in our area, although the programs do address shopping needs in other areas, but in our area, it's strictly for medical appointments. So those are some of the kind of parameters, restrictions in our area that we've at least found in our research.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Margaret Mazer.
Hi, there's only that one blinking traffic light by the dump, but there are no traffic lights. And there should be more traffic lights, and also with crosswalks that say cross, walk. We don't have any of that. We just have one blinking light on the way to the dump road, right?
Has there been a downtown master plan done? Is that what you got a planning grant for, Larry and Cynthia? Or is it a master plan for transportation corridor?
It's a master plan, which we hope will include transportation, but we're in the process of putting an RFP together for the consultants to essentially list what we're looking for.
Okay.
So transportation would be definitely a big part of that, I believe.
Okay. Pam and Paul?
I'd just like to say that it's a lot easier to solve other problems than housing. I mean, we've talked about a lot of other things, but housing comes down to one of the most basic issues that we have here. Most of us have cars. Most of us have some kind of wheels to get around, but getting folks here that can afford to live here and then work here is very difficult.
Yeah, so if you can afford a car, you're going to be able to get around, but if you're lower income, you don't have any options. Sharon, did you have something you wanted to say?
I wanted to speak to your question about other plans, and there is a plan that was developed with the help of WRC right after Irene that would that is designed to connect both sides of Route 11 that now house the Williams Park, where the farmers market happens, and another space opposite that where people can park to go to the farmers market or other activities in the park. And it's a good plan. It just hasn't been implemented yet. And we would need to work in coordination with VTrans, to get the crossings and the corners and all of that worked out. But that would be a critical transportation kind of thing.
What other challenges? Joel, you want to share a challenge?
Just to pick up on what Sharon said, we have tried to get the state to paint crosswalks in a couple of different places. One right by the Williams Park, where Route 11 comes down from Weston, and the other one down by the church. And the answer is, well, you don't have enough crosswalk traffic to warrant painting this on the road. The other comment that I have is we have a disabled daughter who lives on the east end of town, and she has to walk down to the supermarket. And I can't tell you how many times she's been run off the road by inconsiderate drivers.
Yeah.
And that we do need sidewalks or something, at least paint on the road.
Yeah.
That's a DOT problem.
Yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22.
We keep on running into a stone wall with DOT. Yeah. They know how to say no.
Okay. Other challenges around transportation and housing. Is the housing available meeting the needs of the community? And what are the particular needs other than workforce, which people have mentioned that are necessary? Nancy, I'll ask you.
Well, I was going to address the challenges of Airbnb and other kind of vacation rentals, because there used to be year-round housing available to people. They could, from $700 to $1,200, they could rent something. You can't find anything because anybody who can rent does rent through short-term, high income, and it has just sucked up all of the possible rentals. So that's a huge challenge.
Thanks.
And I also realized that there's something at the state legislature level that Kelly might be able to address, but I'm not sure if it's going anywhere.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Jeremy Dworkin.
Yeah, the existing housing stock isn't going to do very much to supplement what's really needed here, which is middle to lower income housing. It's got to be start fresh housing, in my opinion. And we do have land available. What we need really is grants and investments to put up Section 8 or other housing that will assist middle income and lower income folks who need it. Existing housing stock is depleted. It's either we've got rich and poor, we've got people in great, beautiful houses, and we have houses that are a disaster, including, and I hate to be negative, the local post office in South Londonderry, which Sharon talked about, which is an adorable building, but it's a tear down. Yeah. The mill, which they've talked about in Londonderry, the owner will never sell it to the town at some reasonable price. So we're sort of stuck, and we've got to either build new housing or we're not going to end up with affordable housing stock that's going to be available.
Jeremy, when you say we have land, is it municipally owned land or is it just...
No, I don't think there's any municipal land at all. That's really the only in that land I can think of is the land that was across from the Hearthstone Village, which is now a partial gravel operation. I think it's called Prouty Park now at this point. There is property there that could be built on. And with all the gravel that's there, they could probably come up with a septic system that would work there as well. Mm-hmm. It was also talked about years back as a place for a central disposal system for North and South Londonderry, a huge expensive project, which is not supported by appropriate tax dollars. So I think that there is land available. There's other private land available, which I think could be purchased reasonably for building affordable housing, but you need the investors for that.
And is there a housing committee that takes leadership? I'll ask someone else to answer the question. Is there a housing organization that brings it to a point? Like land doesn't develop, people do. So I'd love to hear reflections on that. But Georgiana's been waiting patiently, so I'm going to give you the floor, Georgiana.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm unmuted. Jeremy mentioned Section 8 housing, and I have had this argument with several people in several different arenas. There's a difference between low-income housing, Section 8 housing, government subsidized housing for senior citizens, disabled citizens, low-income citizens. Difference between that and affordable housing or workforce housing. So we do have a small low-income housing facility that has, I think, 20 units. Mm-hmm. But the more significant need at this point is for housing for workers who are not upper middle class. I'm reluctant to say it's a much greater need because of course there's a need for subsidized housing, but there's a huge need for housing that people who don't make $80,000 a year, who still want to live in Londonderry, can, afford to buy or rent and live here.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm going to ask that people may continue to have a sense of challenges that should be on the table, but let's turn a corner into the part of the meeting where we take the next half hour to say, what are things that Londonderry could do? And not just the select board, not just taxes, but what could be done to move housing or transportation forward? What are some of the actual things that could be moved forward? And Kelly, did you want to share?
Yeah, and what I was going to say is actually something that can be done. So that's nice. Oh. And it's in response to Nancy's comment about Airbnb and short-term rentals kind of sucking up the long-term rentals in the area. And the town actually has the ability to regulate the short-term rentals in town to a degree. It would require either an ordinance or a change in our zoning bylaws. And I believe there is a new section in the zoning bylaw rewrite that addresses that. So that's something that can be done.
So there's one
and
thing.
I don't remember the exact language, but it's essentially saying that short-term rentals that are in a house or on a property that someone lives in and is a resident of year-round would be allowed without a permit. But having short-term rentals on properties that aren't homesteads essentially would need a permit to operate.
Okay, thanks.
So that we're allowed to do that now as of the end of last session. That was something that went through last session. They made it so that towns could regulate that to a degree. And then there's a bill this year essentially looking at the same thing from the state level, but it's a little too soon to say where that's going to go. But looking at our local zoning bylaws is actually something that.
So actually looking at zoning bylaws for other things as well, like where housing could go probably. Is there a housing group that does that, that's looking at these kinds of things in a regular way?
Well, the Planning Commission.
The Planning Commission
but
does.
not a specific housing.
Yeah, okay, thanks so much. Cynthia.
I have two things. First of all, the Planning Commission is already working with a consultant on a wastewater study in both villages. So I think that's something that should be acknowledged. It's a lot of work trying to identify, you know, what's available here in both the North and South Village for communal systems. And my second comment is, I think something we could do is invite Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust to our town to have a housing forum. They could talk about their programs. They could see what's here in town, what might be a potential project. So, I mean, they've taken derelict buildings and completely renovated them into workforce housing, affordable housing. And the way that it works is it's based on your income, the rentals. So they have some at a certain level and then others at other levels. So I think they could be a real resource to our town, bringing them in to discuss what our options might be.
Terrific. Well, and so that could happen anytime, but if this is prioritized, it could be, we could bring a big team of people who could help you lay out some strategies and action plans. Sharon, did you want to share something else? I really want to go to other folks that haven't shared yet, but love to have your thoughts.
I'll just say quickly that we've been speaking about in our Project Londonderry Planning Commission efforts, new models of housing, not just sticking to standards, and talking about things like co-housing, different age groups and different family units being together, using different kinds of materials and products like shipping containers that can be retrofitted to make kind of cool housing that's appealing to another group. So to be open to different types of housing for different needs.
Great, thank you. There are other folks who have ideas on what should be done to address housing challenges in Londonderry, or ideas on things that should be done around the transportation challenges to move the community forward. Is someone trying to speak? If you're not on, it'd be great if you muted. Kelly, did you want to say something more? Your hand is still up. Larry and Cynthia, your hand is still up.
I was just going to say, for transportation, Go Vermont has a great set of programs, which we might have them come to town to speak more about. And I keep going back to both England and several other countries in Europe have a post bus system, which I don't know whether we've investigated or checked out in terms of whether it might work in the United States, but they carry both passengers and parcels from town to town, constantly going back and forth. And it works very well. In certain areas, you can catch a bus every 15 minutes. And it's carrying mail. That might be a problem in the United States, I'm not sure, but it's carrying mail and parcels as well as passengers. So I don't know whether, I imagine it's probably been looked into, but it might be something worthwhile to look into again.
Thanks. Are there other ideas that maybe out of the box a little bit around the future of transportation or housing in the community? Yes, Cynthia, you wanted to add?
Well, I was just going to add on for affordable housing. I don't know if we have an inventory already of multifamily units here in town, but that might be helpful as a starting point of what's available.
Has anyone proposed housing development of any sort that has been turned down because of the water sewer issue?
Not that I know of. Sharon can maybe speak to it too, but I don't know of any developments that we've had recently along those lines.
Okay, Nicole's waiting.
I was just going to say, when we were looking into housing and neighborhood connections before we kind of pivoted to transportation, we had some conversation with the owner of Brandymeyer. It's like a motel, and they're looking to sell. I think there are probably a good hefty handful of inns and hotels in the immediate area that, are looking to either sell, that might be able to be converted. They're asking $600,000 for it. It's kind of out of our range of, you know, funding, but I think for the right, you know, maybe a conglomeration of organizations that come together, or I like the idea of bringing in like the Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust, Springfield Supportive Housing, at least for the low income housing. I think that could be maybe a good option. We're still kind of dabbling, but we're really focused on transportation right now. We'll kind of pivot back to housing if we've got some good partners.
Are there other things that the community could do to attract that middle ground of housing that a couple of people described, which would provide homes or rentals for folks with middle incomes? You know, not $80,000 was the figure they used, but who plow people's yards, who are carpenters, who are teachers, who are policemen. Are there any incentives or other ways that the community could make it easier for people to build? Sharon, I'm assuming you're just clapping. You're not.
I actually wanted to just mention that we have incentivized housing projects in our zoning bylaw as a planning commission for many years. And we just don't get that type of application. Mm-hmm. There's some perception that it's maybe just not a good investment for the developer or whatever. And we haven't really found a way to break through that.
Okay. Are there other things that people think about that the community could do to either advance transportation solutions or housing? And I think that there's an element to all of this when this was at the steering committee, that housing and transportation are especially essential to lower income residents. And are there other aspects of this that concern lower income residents? Are there other things that could be done to advance people's opportunities and well-being in Londonderry around transportation or housing? Yes, Pam and Paul.
So playing off of what Sharon was saying, in order to make affordable housing more attractive for a developer, you have to make the incentives support that. Because right now the housing stock is trending towards higher income housing because the developer can make more money on it. So that would then indicate not something at the local, but at the regional or state level that would somehow incentivize it for a developer. That's something that our state reps would have to take a look at.
Yeah, I think it's something this is something so many communities are wrestling with. Do you have any ideas on ways that you could incent that kind of development rather than high-end homes?
Sadly, I come from an environment in New Jersey where it was part of the state constitution was mandated by the Supreme Court of New Jersey that affordable housing was a percentage of housing stock for each of the communities. I'm not sure that we want that. There has to be something that's, I think, a more equitable approach, a more Vermont approach.
Okay, thanks. Joel, you're muted still though.
I don't know how long ago Smith Haven was built, but it's a classic high density single family house community. I think 24 units within a couple of acres of land, I believe. And it's certainly a low cost solution. And also it speaks to transportation because it's an easy place for a transporting device to go to pick up a bunch of people and take them to work. And I don't even know if that's allowed in our zoning anymore. Was that built, Sharon, was that built before zoning became real?
Does it need redevelopment, Joel?
Well, it would have to be within zoning, because I know that right now it guess is a 2 acre minimum on a house. And so that doesn't fit at all. So yeah. Is there any way around that?
Sharon, do you want to answer that?
I'm looking at the chat. Someone is saying that Smith Haven was built in 1981. So it's got some age on. We did have zoning then. It must have been allowed, but I think we could use more than one Smith Haven. I think they're always at full capacity. And that is definitely serving a need that hasn't been expanded very much either in that area or repeated in any other place in town.
Thanks.
We are seeing, someone else has mentioned that we have just a couple of motels out on Route 11 toward Magic, and they're shifting more to weekly rentals and longer term housing just because of the need.
Yeah, I want to go to Nicole and then Georgianne. Nicole?
Yeah, Joel, you were on the same wavelength tonight. That was my comment with Smith Haven. Has anybody ever had a conversation with THM? Because Smith Haven is not the only property, but you know, if they knew there was such widespread interest in those housing units or demand for it, you know, would they be interested in investing in other properties? So it might be worth a conversation with THM to see if they would have any interest in building more. I agree, Smith Haven. Yeah, we need more Smith Havens.
Okay. Let's not get too specific about a particular project yet, but are there other big things that could be done around housing? And Georgianne, do you have one?
Well, this is just a comment about Smith Haven, and that situation is severely limited by access to transportation. There are people who live there who don't have cars, and so they're reliant either on neighbors in the development who have vehicles or hitchhiking in, you know, the frigid cold of midwinter to try and get to services like the grocery store or the bank or the post office. So, you know, yeah, there's low-income housing available, but it's not ideal even for the people who live there.
Mm-hmm. Pam and Paul? Pam and Paul, did you want to say something? Your hand, okay. I'll go to Larry.
What about investigating something like a housing co-op where either businesses get together or the town does something to incentivize, as Paul and Pam were talking about, to create something which I'm not an expert in this area, but I've heard of housing co-ops, and that might be a way to formulate some things. I've been places where businesses have actually built their own employee housing, and it's been an incredible asset to the business to have that done because their employees are right there. Mm-hmm. And I believe they lease out the housing at a very good rate, so that it works very well for the company and for the employees. I don't know whether, you know, we have any businesses to that size, but maybe several businesses could get together and do some sort of cooperative housing.
Great. It feels like we've heard cooperative housing, low-income housing development, engaging your regional leadership, connecting with alternative sorts of housing, zoning revisions, working to set ways to attract, use some open land. Several properties have been described as potential for redevelopment. There's a lot there. And you know, to me, one of the questions is, how do you get proactive with that rather than have it be a bunch of opportunities that are way beyond the capacity of a select board to drive forward? On the other side, in transportation, we're hearing people are whizzing through town. You got a lot of trucks going on the east-west road. You've got some safety concerns. You're not slowing them. You don't have pedestrian ways. You don't have sidewalks in a safe place. There's some fundamental gaps there. There's not a lot of signage, or there's only one blinking red light. And so all those are issues. You've had some back and forth with the Agency of Transportation that hasn't been fulfilling. And again, it's a small town where a lot is happening to you because of the transportation corridors that has historically been a little bit beyond your power to control. Are there other proactive ideas on ways that some of these challenges and issues could be addressed? I'm going to go to Jeremy first and then Larry.
Yeah, one of the tools, and this is maybe overly specific, but one of the tools the town can use, and I suggest that the select board folks take a look at this, is tax abatement on new development for the town. That's been very effective in places like Manchester and some other towns where they have given 5 or 10-year tax abatements, which have encouraged developers to come into town and produce either housing or business structures or established businesses there, which were very helpful to the town growth.
Terrific, thank you. Larry.
Going back to transportation, when we were talking about it earlier, I forgot to mention that I don't know if there's a way we can, in terms of communicating with navigational systems like Google, that sort of thing, but a lot of our local roads are also used by fairly heavily, some of them, by transient traffic going through town. And that is an expense that adds to the town as the roads get a lot of wear and tear from that added traffic. I wonder if there's a way to somehow direct people to use more of the state highways rather than local roads for cutting through.
Okay, Georgianne?
Yeah, as part of my work on the Wyndham Regional Commission, I sit on the transportation committee there, and that's actually been a topic of discussion, not in the last year to my knowledge, but quite recently. There currently is not a feedback system to services like Google Maps or Apple Maps to provide input on where they might be getting it wrong, directing people on roads that aren't really suitable for the purpose. And the previous transportation planner at WRC had actually considered undertaking a master's thesis in that particular issue and trying to find a way to get those services to recognize that kind of feedback. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Thank you, Georgianne. Are there folks who haven't spoken yet that have reflections on things that are within the power of Londonderry to do, or within the power of a concerted group of citizens to advance that could help support the future of housing or transportation in the community? You know, I think that there's probably, in our last session, we had our visiting team kind of have to chop and go really quickly. And I'm really sensitive to the fact that there's an enormous bit of knowledge at the table in terms of the people we've brought. So I'd love to turn a little early to our visiting team to have folks share their perspective on the issues. And I don't want really you to tell us what your agency or organization does so much as I'd love to have you share what's a key theme that you heard. What's something that feels like a really interesting direction without us deciding the priorities of the community? What's a theme or a direction that you think might be particularly fruitful? And I'm going to start with Richard Amore first from Agency of Commerce.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Good evening, everybody. It's great to see everybody again. One of my first memories of Londonderry is the remarkable work you guys did on the train station and all the work on the West River Trail. And I see that as a key, driver for, some of your economic development opportunities, but also as just a transportation or recreational asset to continue to build out and take advantage of. And a lot of the themes I heard tonight were kind of building on local assets. And there are, every community has plenty of challenges, but there's tremendous opportunity and assets in Londonderry. And you guys are taking, the right step, I think, with the master plan for the North Village, looking at how to improve the, the walkability and access. We hadn't heard a little bit about that tonight, but kind of an equity access standpoint, creating communities and villages that are walkable are key to equitable access and opportunity standpoint. And the work you guys are doing in the North Village and the conversations you had about South Village as well to improve those opportunities is great. And I'm encouraged and look forward to being part of the master plan study you guys kick off later this spring.
Thanks, Richard. You may also have some better places resources to support some creative projects in the downtown in the future, eh?
Absolutely. If the legislature is successful in passing the bill, the governor's proposal.
Okay. I want to turn to Deputy Secretary Ted Brady for his reflections.
Thanks so much, Paul. I think on the housing front, it's really important that we all recognize that the fundamental building block of a strong community is going to be a nice mix of housing from every affordability level. And it's also important to remember that it's not your burden to shoulder alone. You're one community based on some strange lines on a map. But remember that this is a regional approach, and talk to your neighboring communities about how you all want to try to move this forward. And also keep in mind when we talk about affordable housing and workforce housing, they're not two different things. To be eligible for a Section 8 or a HUD-RD property like the one you have in town there, a single parent with 2 kids could make more than $15 an hour to be eligible for one of those apartments. So this is really working class Vermonters that need this support. And so I love the idea of this town and neighboring towns working together to make this a higher priority for this part of the Tri-Mountain community. I smell a real victory there for just having a coalesced vision that this is something we need to address to attract more young people here, to help those who need help finding an affordable place to live.
Thank you, Ted. Ben Doyle from Preservation Trust.
Well, thanks for another great conversation. I do have a couple points. I'll be quick. One is on the transportation side. I was surprised I didn't hear more about the river. And it just strikes me that that's such an asset in your community in terms of different kinds of transportation and walkability. I think maybe in the previous session, someone had mentioned the idea of a river walk or something like that. I think it's really interesting to see historic communities that return to the river as a focal point. The other thing that I would just say on that front is it sounds like your community in some respects is operating like it was built for cars, but it wasn't. It was built for people. Right? So the idea that you don't have sidewalks or crosswalks, it's like everything is determined by the car and not the people who are in the community. And I just think it's something to reflect on. And then just the housing component, it's so connected to our previous conversation on economic development that a friend of mine at Rural Development used to say that, housing's where jobs go to sleep at night. And I think it's really critical. If you're going to think about economic development, it really has to start with housing, and not just for economic development because it's the right thing to do. Right? Everyone should have a safe and affordable home. So I think the one strategy that I might give you is I've seen a lot of towns be very successful in forming a housing committee or commission that can just keep this conversation going, looking for ways to incentivize that housing, bringing in the experts like Wyndham and Windsor Housing or Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. But there needs to be a group that's actively focused on that.
Thanks, Ben. And I noticed you were smiling when they were describing a couple of those historic properties. Thinking that you could just tell Preservation Trust is always scheming about how they could help do some of those creative new projects for town.
Always happy to help.
Yeah. Rebecca Ellis from Congressman Welch's office. Hi, Rebecca.
Thank you. Yeah, again, this has been a great conversation. So many great ideas. I think it's a wealth of ideas. So the challenge is going to be choosing a few that you really want to work on. The conversation that I was struck by was about transportation. And I didn't really hear much discussion though of expanding new forms of public transportation. There's a lot of work being done on on-demand services, sort of microservices. And so that might be something to look at, especially as we're looking at climate change and carbon reduction strategies. I see some possibilities here that would be also exciting for Londonderry. Thanks.
Thanks, Rebecca. A couple of years ago, that might have seemed like carbon. What's that got to do with local transportation? And it's really interesting that it's a very normal thing to think about right now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially with post-COVID and what science tells us. So thanks so much. Sarah Lane from Brattleboro Development Corporation.
It's alphabet soup.
Brattleboro Development Credit
Corporation. You got it. Yep. So I just want to mention a few things. If you were in the session I was in before, I had mentioned the project development series that my program puts on. So that helps volunteers, community members sort of get the training they need to help projects move forward. So that's project stewardship, financial management, project management, and grant writing. And I'll put all this, the links in the chat. And then another thing that seems really pertinent to this conversation is we currently are working with the Incremental Development Alliance in the town of Rockingham, and actually VCRD and Preservation Trust and some others are sponsoring that technical assistance we're doing with Rockingham. But the work that they do is cultivating small developers from within the community, as opposed to trying to find developers to come to your community to develop projects. And so I'm going to put some links in the chat. One is for sort of just an intro to small scale development. That's just really interesting overview. And then they actually have a half-day seminar coming up for people who are interested in becoming small developers in their communities. And there's gonna be a lot of great resources there. So just something to consider is, you know, no one's coming to save you, and, you know, we all have to do the best we can to really bring the skills and resources that you guys have as a community, and these organizations can help you build and connect. So I'll put those links in there, and happy to answer any questions about that.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We're fortunate to have in the room virtually with us two of the most important funders for affordable housing in Vermont, John Michael Muse from USDA and Gus Seeligan from VHCB. I'm going to ask Gus to go first this time and share your perspective on what you heard, Gus, and how some of the themes strike you.
Well, thanks very much, Paul. And to put the two sessions I've participated in together, and Ben's comment that housing is where jobs go to sleep at night. I think somebody earlier said that it sounds like you have a great amount of jobs in town and employers are having a hard time filling them. And some people are commuting as much as an hour. I think we heard from at least one participant to get to work. And people are better employees when they don't have to travel that far. And if they can become members of your community, it just strengthens it in a bunch of ways. You're blessed with a very strong housing market, which is a wonderful thing if you're ready to sell your home. And it's a hard thing if you are trying to enter the market. And it's been made worse if you're trying to enter the market by the proliferation of short-term rentals, which I think is not a problem you can do a whole lot about locally, but probably we need to think about more statewide. There's some good things about short-term rentals for some people who have the right properties, and it helps them get by in a way that they might not. A few things that I've seen happen across the state that you might think about, and I would go to Ben's comment about having a housing committee really focused on this as a fundamental issue, is one, to revisit your zoning to see whether there are any things you can do, if it's been a while since it was rewritten, to make it easier. There are many examples of white elephant buildings being converted to housing, or sometimes mostly ripped down. The Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust is about to turn the old Bellows Falls garage, which has been in rough shape for a long time, into about 25 apartments. And we've worked with them on other old big buildings in the mountain towns from time to time. So I definitely would support the idea of inviting them into your community and having them see the assets you have and talk about whether any of those existing properties can be converted, or whether you're looking at new construction on some of the land that's available. I do recall some years ago we did a housing development on the Sugarbush Access Road, and I'm pretty sure Sugarbush made at least a bargain sale of the land to make that happen. There are not many communities, but there are some communities that actually establish their own housing funds with their property tax dollars. That's been done a half a dozen times, I think, across the state. It makes it more enticing for any of us to come invest in your community. But I've also seen communities use that fund as like down payment assistance to young people who need just a little extra help to buy their first home. So those may all be things that you want to think about and look at, and can get kicked around by a good housing committee that really delved into the issue. And again, I would just say that we've been able to work in your community on the conservation side of our mission, and we would love to come visit with you and explore ideas and support any efforts you want to make. The last point, which hasn't been made quite as strongly in this group as the first one, is I think there are some reasons for the community to invest in infrastructure. Housing developers hate uncertainty and they hate risk, and their lenders hate risk even more. And when you don't have access to public water and sewer, projects get more risky. So if there are other reasons in town to think about water and wastewater systems, it would also be beneficial to the development of affordable housing of any type, targeted at any income range. It will reduce the uncertainty of doing development. So I think that's one more issue that you can look at if you have a housing committee that's focused on it.
Thank you, Gus. Appreciate it. John Muse from USDA.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, no, just building off of all the comments, you know, it just doubled down on, you know, transportation and housing are interrelated, which focuses on our downtown villages and walkable communities. And the fact that, you know, more denser development and housing in a downtown with proper infrastructure is really just, you know, a focus area of where you might be able to capture a lot of the things that you want to accomplish in Londonderry. You know, what I heard and what keeps coming back at me is, you know, the community of Vermont, we're a small state and we have a lot of amazing people doing amazing work. I know of no other state probably that does what we do to make housing happen in this state. And I think that's key. The invitation to Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust, Gus's organization, my organization, you know, be bold, read the papers, invite people to your town. Having that committee is going to be key. So, you know, inviting the resources, asking the models, you know, Gus pointed out what they're doing there. There's a lot of examples in our communities that can be replicated, or at least you can learn the pitfalls and maybe not make the mistakes or spend as much time on some of those areas. So inviting people in, the resources, look at the models. And then the second thing that keeps coming back on this is partnerships. You have some major or entities in the region, ski areas to be the ones that partnerships with them on transportation, on housing, because, you know, it's too daunting a task to go it alone. And you have some resources that are in that region that have the same challenges that you do, but as a business. And they'd be a good one to bring in, I think, to be able to have good conversations.
Thanks, Max. Great to have your insight. Gabriel, this is your.
So I think there's been some people with more stature and expertise who have already spoken on this topic than what I have. But I think, you know, from what I've learned connecting with other communities in the region, that housing really seems to be the focus to networking well and to also creating a good framework for growing the region and creating really vibrant communities. So I think you all are in a good spot to be focusing on that, and I just reinforce that point. Thank you.
Thank you so much. John Tracy, State Director for Senator Leahy.
Thanks, Paul. This isn't building new housing, but the governor in his budget proposed another $20 million for weatherization, $5 million to help towns be more efficient in their use of energy, investments in small renewables for low and moderate income individuals. That is a way to help reduce housing costs overall. And with an aging housing stock, there may be an opportunity there. I was going to say the same thing you did. You know, you drive into Londonderry and it's like it's made for cars. It's not made for pedestrians. And that gets to the traffic calming. And I think whatever can be done to have that traffic calming, but then put in the sidewalks or just a streetscape so it feels like you're in a, and you should slow down. So I think there's a lot of potential there. And just so everyone knows, you know, the budget resolution that's been introduced in Washington they're working on now has significant funding in it for broadband and distance learning. I know we heard about that in the previous session. Hopefully that'll be done before March when some of the programs expire. So there'll be federal investment in that front as well. Thanks.
Thank you so much, John. And then I'd go to Mia Watson.
Hey, yeah, I think people have really in this group have really accurately assessed the challenges of building in Vermont. It's very expensive for labor and materials, and you know, sometimes a lot of the good sites for building are already taken up, and definitely a challenge. But I think, like people have said, I think the word in a lot of communities, especially Londonderry, is, you know, what can be done. And I think a housing committee is the best start to explore some of these issues. You know, what if we can't to, you know, or not do much, if we can't very easily make developers come in, let's at least make sure we're not standing in their way. The Department of Housing and Community Development just did a great guide called the Enabling Better Places, a zoning guide for Vermont neighborhoods. And they've pretty light zoning changes that could be implemented without a ton of work and without expensive consultants. And that can be a great place to say, okay, if a developer wants to come in, let's make sure we haven't put burdensome regulations on top of them. And I'll just, you know, quickly plug our housing data website, which I'll share in a link, has some materials if you want to start a housing commission. I think that's a great place to start. And I think a huge asset is all of you being here and willing to talk about it. So many communities are to building new housing. And I think it's great that you recognize that you can keep the character of Londonderry while making room for new residents.
Yeah. And Sue Westa.
Okay. Yeah, I think most of everything I was thinking has been said so far, but I, you know, just want to stress that these issues around affordable housing and what's often referred to as the missing middle are not just Londonderry or even Vermont issues. They're issues that communities around the country are dealing with. And I think that you're on the right track with a lot of things that you're doing, looking at infrastructure. If you're able to plan for and implement infrastructure in the village center, that will go a huge way towards addressing a lot of these issues around economic development, housing, transportation, and focusing that development in those places where you want it to be so that you can retain, you know, those incredible natural resources that you have and that provide, you know, all the infrastructure, recreational opportunities that you have in town as well.
Thank you, Susan. A couple of reflections that I'd have is we're at a really unusual moment in history. You know, when you think about what we have been through in the last year, when you think about what COVID has revealed as fundamental challenges to us as a people nationally and as Vermonters, and you think about the work that Senator Leahy and Congressman Welch and Senator Sanders and the Congress and the federal administration and the governor and Republicans and Democrats are wrestling with how to get it right. but no one is saying that we don't need to reinvest in American infrastructure. No one is saying that we don't need to renew rural America with investments. Those investments are going to come to places that are ready. They're not going to come to a place that's got an open field. They're not going to come to a place that, that hasn't planned for them. And in fact, they're going to be looking for where people have taken power and set in motion, built trajectory, have plans. So, you know, you can look at places like Johnson, where they did $12 million streetscape redevelopment. You can look at water and sewer projects. Every place in town, in the state of Vermont that has one, built one at some point. And this could be a historic moment to do it. And then there's transportation. You look at a town like Craftsbury, a small town, they've got their little transportation issues, but they engaged artists through the communities to help them think about what was in their power in terms of both slowing traffic, visually appealing to people, and changing the landscape. And then you've got Danville, where they had a federal highway, similar situations to you, more in terms of scale, and they got huge transportation enhancement grants to redo their green, redo their so I think everyone got dropped back in automatically. Jenna, do you want to talk about where we are and where the process goes from here?
I would love to. First of all, let me just say thank you. Thank you for trying out this experiment with us, spending the evening with us. I was worried we wouldn't see some of the same energy that we see when we're in person, but we really did. And I really, really enjoyed the conversations and hearing exciting ideas for the future of Londonderry. So where we go from here, we have got a ton of notes that we've captured from tonight, all of the assets, all the challenges, all the ideas you shared. We are going to gather those together. We'll collect the surveys next week that are print surveys in the town office, in the library, and at Mike and Tammy's. So you can fill out surveys there or tell people to fill out surveys there. We also have the online survey. Nick's going to drop that link into the chat. If you have additional ideas that you didn't have a chance to share tonight, or things come to you in the next few days, please add more ideas to the survey. And also share with your neighbors, friends, community members that weren't here tonight. The more we can hear from as many voices as possible, the more effective this process is going to be to identify the core priorities for the future. So please share that survey. It's going to be open till February, week from today, February 10th, and then we'll close it. We're going to take all those ideas and we're going to bring them to you on February 25th. And so we will capture emails from signups on this session and the surveys and send information about that next meeting, where we'll have a chance to review all the ideas that are on the table that you shared tonight, and then have a chance to have a deliberative dialogue to say what's most important for the future, and then to ultimately vote on top priorities and ask folks to sign on to get involved. So that's what's coming next. You'll be hearing from us with those updates, and look forward to it.
So I want to share a couple reflections. First off, what did we hear as a team, the folks that came from Montpelier and all around the state to listen? We couldn't stop the assets conversation in terms of the richness of the outdoors, the beauty of the place, the character of the place, the people in the place. There's an infinite set of assets in Londonderry. And so super impressive to start. The second thing that we observe everywhere we go is that no one's coming from Washington, DC. No one's coming from Montpelier who's going to have a vision for the future of Londonderry. No one brings projects to Londonderry. The places that succeed are the places where people come together, they line up, they decide what they stand for, they put their backs to work, they drive, and they are the ones that capture the resources. They're the squeaky wheel that gets the grease, because they're ready, they have direction, and there's unity in the community. And no community is perfectly united, but when you work together, that's the best way you have to build unity. It's by action. So congratulations to all of you for being on the call and being part of this. We've seen communities do multi-million-dollar projects and things that were free, that brought people together, brought teenagers together, made the town feel more welcoming, made it feel more inspiring for young families to locate there. And we're very excited about what comes from this. A lot of towns have 40 ideas or 50 ideas, and they end up being 50 problems. And the glass is half full and it's hard to address them all. And if you try to address them all, you're going to fail. You're not going to have enough energy, and you're not going to build enough of a spear point of collective activity to drive it home. So this process in the next 2 months is really going to help you all and people beyond the table today set directions on key things that can be driven forward. And then we're going to connect you all with folks that can help you get it done. It's all about your decisions and all your plans and your ideas. But ultimately, we want to stand behind you. We want to be in support. So the fourth thing that I want to say is when you do that work and you set priorities as a community, the atmosphere changes. You have a different kind of power. It's a power that goes from a lot of diffuse issues and a lot of disconnected folks and a lot of folks who've never been invited to be volunteers to a set of directions that you can invite the whole community to be part of in so many different ways. And that builds an atmosphere of project, of hope, of direction. And I have to say, those things are as valuable as $1 million grants from the federal government, because your progress isn't determined by the money that comes to you. It's determined by the feeling for the place that comes from the collective work that people can do. But dollars follow. So I want to thank everyone for being involved. I want to thank the visiting team. These are people who put in a long day. A lot of them are on the front lines of COVID work in state government, in food. I see John Sales. I see the congressional staff. This is a tough time for these folks, and they deserve a little round of applause for putting in an extra 3 hours after their work day to be part of this. I want to thank the select board for inviting the process, the steering committee for coming together and framing the sessions for tonight. All the people who are doing good work in Londonderry now know that it can get bigger, know that there's nothing that a town in Vermont hasn't done. And you look at everything that Londonderry's done, we're not at the end of history, we're at the beginning of it. So sorry to preachify, but lastly, I want to thank each and every one of you. We're in a time where we're told that we're divided as a nation. We're told that we're flummoxed in terms of the way democracy works. Well, it's not true here. In our own communities and in Vermont, we stand together, we line up in action, we get big things done, and we change the world, and we can model democracy for other places. And so it's a great honor to be part of that process with each of you. I hope you all come back to the next session. And I want to thank Jenna and Nick and Margaret and doggone it. Tell me, Jenna, who am I? Alyssa. For being the backbone of the work towards this, but we're really eager and excited for the next phase. So thanks everybody for being with us tonight, and have a great evening. Take care.
Good meeting. Thank you.